Thank you. All right, committee, we're going to call the committee meeting back to order. I'm going to turn the gavel over here to the co-chairman, but before we do that, before we leave the YDOT discussion, I believe Representative Nicholas has a suggestion for a committee directive. Representative Nicholas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to propose is that if the two chairs are receptive to it, is to form a working group that will evaluate and draft up and do the homework for a draft gas tax indexing bill that we can present to as much as we can in our next August meeting, because that's going to be the primary meeting for the send-off for finding additional funding for YDOT. And I raise this because of, I've been in a lot, when I first came in the legislature 15 years ago, there was a gas tax that had failed 2 or 3 times. And it failed under my first time or two my first years in the legislature, but we passed it. And the reason that we passed it on the 3rd time it came around was because it was demonstrated, and I think conclusively, that a 10% gas tax increase would have the effect of less than 1.5 cents on the population, meaning that you had a 10-for-1 benefit, basically, because of the way that the gas taxes are structured and what they charge in the cities around us, or the states around us. Right now, almost all of them are more than 10 cents a gallon more than us. And so there was also a demonstration at the time that because our gas tax was substantially lower than the surrounding states, we were actually supplementing with our own dollars the other states around us because of the nature of how the federal taxes and the assessments, particularly on commercial trucking. So what I'm suggesting is that this working group go and look at those figures and numbers and how it works, and see if, because my understanding is if we had a 5-cent increase right now, you would not see an increase at the pump, period, other than maybe a 2-week or 2-month period, and then it goes back to the same price. That's just the nature of how it works, and it's kind of counterintuitive, but that's my understanding of how it works. And so in order to look into that and see if in fact that's the case, I think if we had a working group that we could sit down, work with YDOT to go through those numbers and the information and data that's out there, and so we could have that ready with a draft bill. And the other concept also is indexing it so that you don't have to look at it every year. If the surrounding states that have gas tax, if it goes up, we index on what the surrounding states do. And that way it's 1 or 2 pennies at a time. And any increase could be incremental as well, so that we can say there is 0 impact if we have a draft bill out there. So my suggestion is just doing a working group and having that material present at our next meeting, and then any follow-up based upon what we come up with.
Mr. Co-Chairman, you have any thoughts on that?
Certainly, I think I agree with Representative Nicholas. Our intent, our number 1 priority is to look at road funding. And so we ought to look at everything. And I agree. I certainly, the last time we tried actual increase in a tax, pretty much the industry was behind it because they realized that it really doesn't affect us much at the pump. But the perception was what just killed it. So I think doing a working group and actually looking at it and bringing, it doesn't mean it'll produce a bill or we will even want to look at it, but to do our due diligence, we really have to look at it because that is our number 1 priority, is to look at road funding. And so I like the idea.
I am certainly inclined to at least have nothing more than at least an educational working group to bring us something in our next meeting, since we did not really discuss it in major detail over this meeting. I'm okay with that, and I think with the chairman's blessing, I think what we'll do is we'll form a working group. I'll appoint 2 members, and then the co-chairman will appoint 2 members. And then what I would also ask is that you work with stakeholders. So I don't see them in here anymore. I think they all kind of took off because they expected whiteout was going to be over and done with. So whiteout would be one, but I'm thinking truckers, county commissioners, those people that rely on this, get together with them as well. But more than
we're gonna
anything,
need 'em.
yeah, more than anything, I think it'll be an educational discussion. I think we'll throw you guys on the agenda as the working group in our next meeting to discuss that. So
Great.
with that, staff, if we can just add that to that, and then I'll also request staff that if they need anything major, you guys will have, I'll let you guys know who the House is appointed. Senator will let you know who he appoints, and then we'll just kind of keep a working group going with that. And with that, I'm going to toss the baton, shut my mouth, and let the good senator take over, and we're going to get out of here early, it sounds like.
Well, let's hope so. Thanks. Okay, we'll spend the afternoon talking military issues. Thank you. So first thing on the agenda is the Department of Defense agency overview, and I'm pleased to see my good friend Tammy Perot here. Ms. Perot, would you please introduce yourself and tell us all about the Department of Defense State Liaison Office?
Okay. Chair Pappas, it is wonderful to be here amongst friends. And Co-Chair Brown, thank you very much for the honor of coming to the beautiful state of Wyoming, to the town of Casper, where I understand you have the cleanest air, tied with Honolulu in the nation, and get a chance to look out at these beautiful mountains. My name is Tammy Perot, for the record, and I represent the Defense State Liaison Office. We're an office within the Department of Defense that works on military family quality of life issues. You could ask me today questions about updates that are happening at F.E. Warren or changes that are happening in the Pentagon, and I'll do my best to maybe answer some of those, but mostly I'm here to talk about families. If I'm getting a little too close or too far, please let me know. All right. So our office works on military family quality of life issues, and we're lucky here in the state of Wyoming because over the past decade, we have had a chance to have some amazing partners with the folks behind me that are sitting behind me today. General Porter and his predecessors have done a wonderful job partnering with the active duty community to ensure folks in your body, the state legislature, understand the needs of our military community and work to ensure those successes. I'm especially grateful to Lieutenant Colonel Hinkle and to Mr. Chris Smith for the work that they've done with this body to ensure success. And so today, I'm going to talk about some ideas. I'm going to talk about some things the state can think about doing, and we'll see where we can go from there. All of these things are things that for you all to consider. What's next for the state as far as continuing to support our military family members? The first slide that you'll see is a picture of the Pentagon. I am staff for the Pentagon. We're an organization under change, and there are great things about that because one of the things that we say with change is opportunity. Everything we work on and everything I come and talk to you about is vetted by my leadership. So as I know sometimes legislators, you all have things that you want to work on, and I will do my best to help you with those, but I have to make sure that those things are vetted by my leadership. We have good ideas that come to us so that we know what to work on. And the way we get those good ideas is from folks like yourself that do good things in the states, and then we come out and ask other states to do it. And almost everything I talked to you about today has been done in another state. We also have military service organizations, veteran service organizations, our military services, Air Force, Army, they all provide input on the policies and information that I'm going to talk to you about today. And these all have tried and tested models that we've seen used. Our vision is thriving military families. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why that's important to me personally. I am a military spouse. I am a OIF combat veteran, and I've been around the military community for almost my entire life. But before I came to be part of the military community, I was like many of you. I grew up in Eastern Washington on a ranch with cattle, and I didn't really know a lot about how important the military was and how important military families were. And so I'm here today to know that these two things go hand in hand. We can't have the great things that we do out in rural parts of our states and out to keep our states safe without the military families that support our military members. And so with that in mind, I'm going to talk about some policy priorities. On the next slide, you'll see where we're at across the nation. There's 8 of us across the nation. Our person down in Texas isn't filling their slot right now, but we are all available for the states out across the nation. We're regionally located. On the next slide, you can see your demographic data of Wyoming. You have outsized influence. Although you don't have a lot of military personnel in your state, you're a small state and it makes a difference for you. I'd like to also point out a few numbers that aren't on this slide. According to the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, the Department of Defense added $0.6 billion to the Wyoming economy in 2023. And that equates to $1,026 per resident for Wyoming. This includes $362 million in payroll. Well, that didn't all go to Cheyenne. That's not all in Representative Brown's district. $1.2 million of that was contracts right here in this county. And $4.3 million worth of personnel expenses were right here in this county as well. Representative Brown did get a little bit of that, $146.8 million down in Laramie County and $329.4 million for personnel down in Laramie County. This isn't just a story about Cheyenne. This is a story about what the military and the Department of Defense are doing across your state. I'd like to talk about what's not on this slide. On April 18th, the Department of Family Services for the state of Wyoming signed a memorandum of understanding with F.E. Warren Air Force Base to expand coordination on military family child care. We worked on this policy for several years to make sure we got it right. And Wyoming is a state that joins about 17 others across the nation now to ensure that military family child care can be supported by the installation off post. What's that mean for you all? It means that F.E. Warren can now provide oversight for a family child care home that is specifically providing care for military children. A very good MOU has been put in place, and I think that this shows the cooperation that we like to have with the state and with state organizations. We are especially grateful to Michelle Lala and her staff over at DCY, over at the Department of Family Services, as well as the entire F.E. Warren team, and especially Ms. Cisneros, who worked on this over several years. Making these MOUs happen has been an important model for us. And we now hold up this MOU, which was so well written, as an example for other states to use across the nation. I also want to talk about another success that's not on this slide, and that's concurrent jurisdiction. This committee heard a lot about that over the past several years. And Wyoming set the model for how the National Guard led the effort to establish concurrent jurisdiction in the states. Your language that you used is language that is exceptional, and we appreciate the help of Lieutenant Colonel Hinkle and the entire staff of the Wyoming National Guard to make sure that that was successful. We've got a road ahead of us on establishing concurrent jurisdiction. It's now up to the Air Force to hand over that jurisdiction and finalize those processes. So if you're wondering about, well, what happened to that concurrent jurisdiction? Absolutely, we still have some work to do on it. That was the first step. Other successes on this slide, the Purple Star program, led by this committee, Representative Brown, improving service member licensure and credit, also work that was led by this committee, a new legislation, SF 119, completed in 2025. You have remote driver's licenses established for your military members. You have veterans hiring protections that were put in place in 2016, and you provide Medicaid waivers for your military families that were put in place in 2017. There's more than I can list here. Wyoming has been a wonderful partner, and we appreciate it. Okay, so these are the policy priorities I'm going to talk about that we're currently working on. And there's 7 of them in front of you today. I'm going to just go through each of these and we can chat a little bit about them. Please, if you have any questions as I go, these are some sort of wonky policy topics that may not come in front of this committee very often. And so please feel free to let me know if I can provide any further details. So on the next slide, you will see that 21% of our military spouses in the labor force are currently unemployed. Unemployment is an impact not only for our active duty families, but also for our Guard and Reserve families. And states across the nation have started to take some additional steps to reduce that unemployment. Sometimes these seem like very small steps, but they can all make a difference. One is to ensure those state licensure processes that you have put in place over the years are readily knowledgeable for your military spouses. Can a military spouse who's coming to the state of Wyoming know what processes are in place, how to contact someone, who to contact? That's a simple way to make sure that military spouses are able to utilize those statutes that you all have put in place. We've seen states do this by simply setting up a website that very clearly tells them where to find these statutes or how to use these statutes, an email address that somebody's on the other end of the email box for specifically for them to reach out to for questions. Something very simple can be put in place to help ensure those statutes that you've put in place are working. We have also seen states consider adding military spouses to state hiring preference. Most recently, Texas, Alaska, Utah, and Nebraska have added military spouses as a category that can receive a hiring preference in the state, along with ensuring that a private employer can preference a military spouse and not be concerned about any legal ramifications if a private employer chooses to preference a military spouse. Again, Maryland and Alaska have also put that statute in place, and we see those protections as well being considered across the nation this year. So I'd like you all to consider whether those are options that Wyoming would want to add as additional support for employment for military spouses. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, occupational licensure compacts. And I hope that there's some questions with this one. For those of you that may not be familiar specifically with occupational licensure compacts, I'll start with the big topic, the bigger picture, and that's compacts in general. These are state-to-state legal agreements, and Wyoming is a member of 41 compacts. So these are often around natural resources, water. You also are parts of compacts on education, on juveniles. These are agreements where you and another state or many other states have found a way to find a solution to what is sometimes a challenging policy problem. Licensure compacts are another type of compact, and Wyoming is a member of 7 occupational licensure compacts. These streamline licensure processes as you move from state to state, and they're specific to an occupation. So Wyoming belongs to the speech pathology audiology, counseling, EMS, medical licensure compact, nurse licensure compact, occupational therapy, and SIPAC. You notice a trend with all of those? They're medical related. And as a state that is always looking to identify how to expand medical professionals in the state, compacts are a way to ensure that the licensure is not a barrier for medical professionals working in the state of Wyoming. In the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, that was the John McCain National Defense Authorization Act, signed under President Trump during his first term, the Congress directed the Department of Defense to engage with the Council of State Governments in a cooperative agreement to establish occupational licensure compacts that will specifically help military spouses. Out of that came the development of what is currently 8 and will be 10 occupational licensure compacts specifically that are professions that are heavily impacted by military spouses. I'd like you all to note that these are also professions that women work in primarily as well. So we have cosmetology, massage therapy, and this is a workforce that is these are workforces that are often overlooked. Out of that work to develop occupational licensure compacts, we have learned a lot. Occupational licensure compacts are specific to the occupation. They take multiple years of stakeholder development, with state boards being involved of all across the nation, with professions being at every level being involved, from practitioners to the national organizations. The occupational licensure compact language that your body considers has gone through years of vetting. We like these because they don't just apply to military spouses, they apply to everyone in the profession, and they maintain parity for a military spouse in having a compact license. So we have been big supporters of occupational licensure compacts. I'd like to just go ahead and note a couple other things that are important for you to realize about occupational licensure compacts. They're designed for states to maintain their authority. They're designed for states to bolster their sovereignty. That state-to-state coordination is what makes states able to resolve problems that are not the role of the federal government. And that's what compacts do. There's minimal additional resources usually needed. Some compacts take more. Obviously, there's large compacts that take more resources, but minimal additional resources because the Compact Commission manages the role of transferring those licenses. Additionally, through the cooperative agreement through the Department of Defense cooperative agreement, we have provided resources to establish an open source data system which will allow states a low barrier access to coordinating the data system across the compact. On the next slide, you can see sort of where states are at in the nation in adopting compacts. I'd like to just note that Montana probably has turned a slightly different shade here as they wrap up their legislative session. They're about to adopt 3 more compacts. Colorado has adopted 13, Nebraska 13, Utah 11, North and South Dakota are at 9 and 10 respectively. So the states around you are adopting these occupational licensure compacts. And the research shows that that's part of what makes these work, is when states in geographic areas work together to adopt these compacts. So this is a good map for you all to visualize sort of where you're at in the nation amongst some other states that are adopting these compacts. On the next slide, it lists some of the occupational licensure all of the occupational licensure compacts that are available to you. IMLC is not on this list, and there's one other that has just recently been finalized, and that's podiatry. But I'd like to highlight just a couple of these for you all to consider for your next legislative session. Physician associates or physician assistants. I don't believe your physician assistant is here today, but I was hoping to give him a little bit of preview about this today. Your physical therapy compact, which was considered by your body last year. Dentists and dental hygienists, that is an important compact that covers 2 professions, right? You're seeing not just the benefit for your dentist, but also your dental hygienists, respiratory therapists, and social workers. A lot of these support telehealth as well. So although we continue to reduce barriers for telehealth, having that multi-state license ensures that your state is able to track the actions of somebody who maybe is a bad actor in another state. The compact has very robust systems in place for public protection. And this is something that it makes a compact unique and helpful for states as they continue to implement these. I'm going to pause there.
Representative Tarver.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Maybe I missed something here, but just curious, California and New York, they seem to be the only 2 states that are not cooperating. Is there a particular reason for that?
Through the chair, Representative, I think that's a very good question as to why have California and New York not selected to participate in occupational licensure compacts. Both states that are very high barrier regulatory states that have chosen not to participate yet, although their legislative bodies continue to have these discussions and review these. But these are two states, just very high regulatory states that have chosen not to participate yet. I think it is a unique challenge for us within DoD as well, because those are both states with a significant military population. These are about workforce. And when we often go to hearings across the nation, we often are hearing from the professionals in the workforce, especially mental health professionals. Social workers are a great example about how they want and need a compact. And unfortunately, you sometimes will hear from other organizations or from members within state level regulatory agencies that maybe they're less certain about being comfortable with compacts. And that's what we have seen in both California and New York. There's a desire, it just hasn't come to fruition yet.
Representative Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate the opportunity to talk through some of this stuff. So a question for you is on when there are different guidelines or different requirements for licensure state to state, how is that resolved when one state is maybe more stringent and they don't necessarily want to admit somebody that has, from a state that has lesser requirements?
Through Senator Pappas to Representative Geringer, great question. And thank you, because I imagine Wyoming has the strictest standards in the nation. That's what we keep hearing from all of our states. But no, without all jokes aside, when we go out and identify how we're going to develop an occupational licensure compact, the first thing that we look at is, or CSG looks at, in coordination with a variety of other groups, is making sure that there's at least about 35 states that first license that occupation and that have comparable standards. So almost all of these occupations that you see listed on this slide have a fairly comparable standard, usually based on some national level board certification type exam, or you can look across the nation and you can say, okay, all cosmetologists are right about in this number of hundreds of hours that they need to have. We did not support the development of any compact that had where the profession had wildly different standards. And I will often hear these nuances from states. Hey, our professional is absolutely better, absolutely better. And when we go back and we really look at those standards and compare them across the states, states are more similar than they are different. And for those states that are wildly different, then maybe that compact's not the right fit for those states. And I think what I have just discussed maybe answers the previous question a little bit as well.
And so I can add a little bit to that conversation as well, because I served on CSG's NCIC, on the National Centers for Interstate Compacts. I was an advisory board member for a while and helped draft actually the speech, language, and pathology compact. And the issues with compacts are not the credentials. Credentials typically, like for that particular compact, ASHA, I mean, they're the same. Education, clinical hours, all of that. And CSG would not do a compact if there wasn't commonality. The issue that I find, and that has been a problem in Wyoming, is that members don't understand how a compact works. And I've had too many people think that we are giving up our rights, our sovereignty. And we really are not. Anybody who comes to Wyoming And it depends on what kind of a compact. Sometimes it's, usually it's a license that's issued in another state, and just you're able to work in this state under another state's license. That's typically how it's done. That person coming into the state always has to follow state law. So if we have regulations in this state that may be different than Colorado, and if we're both in the same compact, that Colorado practitioner, when they come to Wyoming, they have to practice according to our statutes. And so a lot of our members don't understand that. They think that the compact is going to tell us how we should regulate that practice in the state. That's not the case. And I've been trying to educate members that, yes, there's things in the compact, there's rules and procedures, there's rules and procedures. And I hear all the time that, oh, the commission is going to write rules for Wyoming. No, only for the practice. And so I think that there's not an issue with credentialing people from another state, because Lord knows, when we work state to state, we work better than having the federal government involved. Representative Geringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess as a follow-up too, then what is the difference really between a compact like this and, say, reciprocity, where in my familiarity, Colorado licensure as a civil engineer was able to transfer up here as a civil engineer just by going through an application process, versus some sort of compact that's a state level, architects, electricians, plumbers, whatever you want to say. So what's the difference here and how does it make it better in these particular fields? Do we really need it for additional fields, or just do we need a little more leeway in the reciprocity process?
Would you like, through Senator Pappas?
Who's going to answer that?
Yeah, well, I'll take first crack at that. So through the chair to Representative Gering, you are an engineer, I take it, sir?
I'm a recovering engineer.
All right. All right, well, great. Well, the reciprocity is an elegant process for states to use when there is not a compact. And that oftentimes you see reciprocity more often when there are not sort of these overall national standards and even agreements that you see in the compacts. So I think a great example of in your profession is people always say to me, well, we're not going to have an engineering compact because people who work in Wyoming need to know about certain things, seismic activity, cold weather engineering, whereas a person who's providing nursing care in Wyoming is probably providing very similar nursing care in Colorado. So it really is whether a profession is well suited for a compact. Reciprocity also places an additional burden on your occupational licensure board to review and identify whether that other state that you are coming from has comparable standards. Whereas in a compact, a state is that it joins the compact, you know that that state has comparable standards because they've agreed to that within the compact, and they've probably had those same standards before even joining the compact. So I'm going to take a moment and just dive into sort of this process a little bit as well, in that there's some different kind of two main types of compacts. One is a multi-state licensure compact, which works just like your driver's license. Your Wyoming driver's license, it works in other states. You don't have to stop off and do anything. The speech pathology audiology compact and several of the other compacts that you belong to work slightly different, where you need to request a privilege to practice in order to practice in that state. And that way, the state does know you're there, you're practicing, and there's a sort of a notification that your license has additional, I would say, like an endorsement. You have your CDL to practice in another state, so to speak. So there's different processes, and the data system is going to pick up if you come to Wyoming and you practice outside scope of practice. The practitioner is responsible for knowing if they can provide certain levels of care when they are in the state. So this is especially important for medical providers of any type, of every level. What can they prescribe? What can they dispense? What can they do for procedures? And that is the responsibility of the provider. Sometimes we hear, well, should we really expect providers to do that? Professionals do those things, that they know, okay, I'm going to practice in this state, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I think that this is a very elegant system, especially for these professionals that have entered into compacts.
In addition, one other thing, not always, but usually when you have reciprocity, certainly in architecture, you hold a license in every state, typically under reciprocal agreements. With compacts, most of them, I think the physician compact is different.
Physician, podiatry, and teaching are slightly different.
But mostly, you only hold one license in your home state, and then you get privilege to practice through the compact.
Yeah.
Whereas in reciprocal licensing, like if I wanted to be licensed, I'd have to hold a license and pay a fee for a full fee in every state.
Yeah.
Now, under privilege to practice, there may be a fee, but it's a minor fee, and you can practice in many states. So portability of licensure is much easier under compacts than it is under reciprocal agreements. Okay. Representative Larson.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, over the years, we've passed these in Wyoming, and we are very familiar with them. Is that most of these go to a standing committee that have expertise on the subject matter. And historically, these compacts or these agreements have taken a couple of interims to make sure that the standing committee that has expertise over them is comfortable implements. I think the nursing compact and the EMS compact took a couple of years. I can't remember on I think that last one you done was like a slam dunk. That was one of the, and then I'd done one on the behavioral analysts that went through pretty quick. And so I guess my question is, as you come here to this committee on military affairs that doesn't, because it impacts military, but it impacts the state and all, then those professions as a whole. So is it your intent that you're thinking that this committee would bring forth this compact, or are you going to go before the standing committee that has expertise and encourage them to do that?
Through the chair to Representative Larson. This is an excellent question, and I appreciate it. This is the standing committee, which I come in front of. I cannot provide any further feedback than that on what the committee chooses to do.
So Representative Larson, certainly she would testify in front of any committee that would,
Yeah.
because almost every compact has the, well, at least DOD is looking for every compact to have the ability to do licensing for spouses.
Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that, but as we're contemplating what we're going to do as a committee, kind of filling this out historically, the way we've done these compacts, it's my impression that she was saying, Transportation Committee, we'd like you to present the physician's assistant compact and run that bill. And I'm I'm just trying to clarify because that's historically not the way we've done it.
And I don't think that's the intent here. The intent, I think, needs that these compacts will go through the standing committee of, whatever topic, if it's, most of them are medical related. But there's others, there's one for barbers, I think. That maybe that comes from the military though.
Through the chair to Representative Larson, I understand the limitations of being able to, of whether I may be sitting in front of the right committee for this discussion. I would hope that this committee would be knowledgeable about the benefits of occupational licensure compacts for our military family members. And I would look forward to the opportunity to sit in front of any other committee. However, this is the committee that all military items come to first, which is why I'm here before you today. And so I appreciate the question.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I hate to break the compact thread here, but I have a question on your employment support. 21% of military spouses, is that in Wyoming or is that in the US? And if it is not Wyoming, is Wyoming better or worse than that on the employment support?
Through the chair to Senator Anderson, thank you very much for the question. That is a national number. That number came from our most recent active duty spouse survey that was done in 2023. That number is based on military spouses that are in the workforce, meaning they're seeking work. It doesn't include those military spouses that say, I'm home with the kids right now, right? I'm not looking for work. Those are military spouses that are looking for work, they want a job, and they're unemployed. I do not have that number for the state of Wyoming, unfortunately. Thank you for the question.
Okay, I think we should press on. I think we've got 5 more of your policy need to get through.
I will get through these next few a little bit more quickly. Thank you very much, Chair. So the next policy priority I want to just touch on is state response to military interpersonal violence. The military often issues something called a military protective order. This is an order issued through the military. And I have had the chance to talk to your staff here at the National Guard. We just want to make sure that if there is any state statutes that need to be cleaned up to ensure that military protective orders can be submitted as evidence for civilian protective orders. The example we often see of this is if there's a military protective order in place, a family member returns to the state of Wyoming, or a family member's living out on the economy in Wyoming, that they can use that military protective order as evidence for a civilian protective order. On the next slide, I'd like to just mention that.
I have a question
Yes.
about that, Mr. Chair.
Representative Nicholas.
So, to me, whether it can be used as evidence or not is a pretty easy question. The question is in what capacity it's being used for and the purpose of it. And so I think it would always be typically admissible in court in Wyoming, depending on what the issue is in front of the court. So my question is there a problem with it? Are you aware of a problem in Wyoming where that would be an issue?
Absolutely, through the chair. Representative Nichols, I am not aware of this being a problem. I bring this policy priority in front of the committee just so you're aware that this is something that we are asking states to make sure that it's not a challenge. We have had states that have had to pass statute to ensure that it was admissible evidence. Okay, I'm going to move on to a couple more policy priorities. The next one is military advisory committees. We have several states that have established military advisory committees. This is an opportunity, especially in our current changing environment for the military, to bring together that economic story, the active duty story, the National Guard story, and any other emerging issues under an advisory committee. We've seen these established through legislative intent. We've seen these established through executive order. And we have states, even states that also, like Wyoming, have small military populations like North and South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas, that have some type of forum where the military, everyone who's interested in military-related issues can come together and identify policies that can be improved and do coordination. So we would just ask the state of Wyoming to consider whether that's the right fit for the state of Wyoming and consider establishing an advisory committee or working group that has a routine coordination. Open enrollment flexibility, I'm going to just skip over this. Open enrollment flexibility is currently primarily done through boundary line exemptions in the Cheyenne area. And if the state were to consider any other policies which impact specific open enrollment type policies to give consideration to military children. I'm going to spend just a little bit more time on this next topic, state support for military families with special education needs. And I imagine Representative Larson will probably defer me to the Education Committee after this discussion. But I wanted everyone on this committee to know how this impacts our military families. 31% of our families with children with disabilities went over 60 days without services when they moved to a new state. And 42% of our military families said their IEP was not implemented when they got to a new state. It doesn't seem like a long time, 60 days or not getting that IEP implemented right away, but it is, especially for a family that is moving every few years. Special education is challenging. It's even more challenging for our military families. And we are asking states to look at how they can reduce this burden on families. One of the ways states can do this is by expanding your advanced enrollment policy to include IEPs and 504s in clarifying that they must look at assessing within 30 days. Additionally, the state of Virginia has enhanced parental consent, and other states have reduced the burden in due process hearings. You have in your packet a handout that looks like this that provides further details on this policy priority. This is not important just for your military families, but also for your highly mobile children and your highly mobile families. These kids can easily fall behind in a very short amount of time. How do we make sure that they're getting integrated as quickly as possible?
Senator Brown.
Tammy, question for you on that. Do you happen to have even anecdotal evidence of anything like that occurring in the Cheyenne area? And the reason I ask is if this committee doesn't want to take it up, I'll certainly bring something up like that. I sat on that and the Education Committee, so I'm well versed in both committees. Yeah, 30, 60, 90 days is, I mean, that's a long time for an IEP to not be recognized and at least dived into, or Devin, whatever. So do we have some evidence that I could utilize as evidence?
Yeah, utilize it as evidence. Representative Brown, through the chair, I'd be happy to address that with you. I had a good visit with the school liaison officer at FE Warren before I came here, and they're currently working through some additional special education. There's apparently a large work group in the school district right now that's working to identify some process improvements. So as far as specific case examples, I'd be happy to talk to you offline about that, and we can do some follow-up discussion on that. But I think that this is definitely something that the school district itself has shown a great interest in continuing to make changes and improve, and that's very exciting that this is a time for those improvements. Yeah.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, and I would include the Labor and Health Committee, because I would think that this would go for your pre-K-12 for the developmental delays in Wyoming in our child development centers because those children would have an IEP too. I had concern on this, Mr. Chairman, and so I reached out to both agencies, to Department of Health and Department of Education. And currently, we can enroll ahead of time. And for pre-K-12, the child development centers, they can pre-enroll, they can come in if they've got an IEP in place. Is there always a risk that you don't get services in less than 30 days? Not, it shouldn't be, it's not on the policy side, it's on the location side. And that's where, when we see it happen, a school district or a local CDC may get tangled up. But unless you're seeing a policy problem or a statute problem, I think our statutes are very streamlined to allow a very fluid transition, even ahead of time, on those IEPs to be addressed and for those children to get services. Am I mistaken?
Through the chair to Representative Larson, thank you for the question. I do not believe your advanced enrollment statute includes clarity that an IEP or 504 can be part of the pre-work on advanced enrollment, and that clarity may be helpful in statute. Additionally, when I reviewed your special education policies, and I would be I welcome if someone would like to correct me on this. I believe there's some improvement that could be made on parental consent as well. And so I'd be happy to have a conversation offline about that. Okay, thank you.
Sounds like we can improve that, but it's not the task of this committee to do that. So,
All right, and our,
we can task one of the other committees.
yeah.
Well, and I'm happy to deal with those two on a personal side, and with that, those shouldn't be big changes.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, the final policy priority is Penn State did a detailed study for us on K-12 education. And again, this addressed just any updates to the advanced enrollment statute that I believe Representative Brown did that statute that was done in 2021, making sure that the state's reporting with full transparency for their involvement in the Interstate Compact on educational opportunities for military children, ensuring that there's open data for the military spouse student identifier, and making sure military families as they come to the state are aware of the Purple Star program. I'd be happy to share that full report with the committee, especially those of you that are interested in education issues on those minor improvements that could be made in states. So that is my final slide. I said I would be brief today, and I took much more of your time than I expected, and I just want to say I'm grateful. I'm grateful for your time and grateful for all the work that this committee does and has done to support our military families.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, thank you, Tammy.
So I'd like to follow up with DFS on that MOU with F.E. Warren. Could you tell me who it was in DFS that you acknowledged there?
Through the chair to Representative Larson, yes, it was the director signed that MOU. The director of the Department of Family Services is the correct name, correct?
No.
Or Department of Family Services.
Our director's Korn Schmidt.
Yes.
Okay, I thought you said Song or something there.
The staff person that worked on that MOU was Michelle Lala. She's, I think, the local staff person for the F.E. Warren. Aaron, I'd be happy to get a copy of the MOU to you, Representative. Yeah.
I'll visit her. Thank
Yeah, it was very well done.
Okay, any questions, committee?
Mr. Chairman, I realize a lot of these services are for active duty. How does that process follow people that's separated? I know many of us that go for services, whether it's through the VA and stuff, we don't get information like you presented today. So I was just seeing how that
Yeah,
weaves together.
yeah.
Thank you.
Through the chair to Representative Posey, many of the programs and policies that we put in place, especially around occupational licensure, will continue to serve military and veterans as they transition. And however, I would defer to probably a further conversation with myself and colleagues here in the room about how those services continue. We do work closely with an office in the Pentagon called the DoD VA Collaboration Office, and that office does help shape some of our policy priorities. So I'd be happy to have a further conversation. Yeah, thank you.
Further questions, committee? Okay, thank you, Tammy. Appreciate
Thank you
your,
very much.
Great information, thank you. Okay, so I think we're on to the Wyoming Military Department Agency Overview. Colonel Porter, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lady and gentlemen of the committee, it's good to see all of you again. It doesn't seem that long ago that we were in the session, but I'm certainly happy to get a chance to talk with you again. I brought quite a crew up here, and I'll just tell you the reason behind that. A lot of changes in the military department overall. Wanted to bring some folks up to kind of expose them to you, give them a chance to meet you, and I'm going to have some folks, different folks, potentially brief today, and if that's all right with the committee, just to kind of give them some training in that area so that they get a shot at it. But let me make some introduction real quick, if I could. To my immediate left is Command Sergeant Major Thad Eady. He has taken the road of Command Senior Enlisted role of Command Senior Enlisted Leader. Those of you may recall Chief Master Sergeant Moore. Actually, Josh was selected as the Air National Guard Senior Enlisted Leader. So he has moved to Washington, D.C. and is actually the Senior Enlisted Leader for the entire Air Guard. So we're very proud of him and doing that. Sergeant Major Eady is going to do a great job coming forward and taking that role as the CSL. Really quickly, behind me is our Director of Veterans Affairs, Mr. Tim Shepard. Right next to him is our Senior Legal Counsel, Lieutenant Colonel Karen Hinkle. On the back there is Command Sergeant Major Eduardo Herrera, who is the Sergeant Major for our Recruiting and Retention Battalion on the Army Guard side. Jerry, I'll let you talk to, Jerry is also our policy advisor from the governor's office. Right back behind me is Alyssa Hinckley. She's a captain in the Army Guard and also serves as our liaison officer. Further behind me is Senior Master Sergeant Jen Ballinger. She's the executive to myself now. To my immediate right is our recruiting and retention commander for the Army side, Paul Leone, just to kind of give everybody a sense of who we've got up here. So I appreciate everybody's ability. Did I forget anybody? We good? Oh, yeah, Mr. Kane. Hey, Rob, stand up back there so they can see you. So Rob Kane is formerly our base operations manager at Camp Guernsey. We brought him down about 2 months ago to serve as the Joint Chief of Staff. So Rob is a former veteran of the Iowa Guard and now serves in the capacity of Joint Chief here. Thanks, Sergeant Major.
Well, welcome, everyone.
Yep, thank you, sir. Hey, if you go to the first slide. Real quick, the agenda, I'll try to do a quick agency overview and then we'll go through. Don't have very much in terms of topics here. We've talked about probably two main ones that we'll get after the recruiting and retention bonus and then the indigent veteran burial are the two topics that we have right now to brief you on. Next slide, please. Just wanted to kind of show you just a quick collage of things going on in the military department. We're significantly busy at the moment with some folks deployed, and I'll get to them in a minute. Obviously, some of the actions with federal hiring has affected us as well, and so it's high adventure right now in the military department. Very quickly, just to give you a kind of a sense, the military department is really composed of two entities. The Wyoming National Guard, which has the Army National Guard and the Air National Guard underneath it, as well as a joint task force, and then the Veterans Commission, which also falls under the military department. So the military department is really made up of those two entities. On the National Guard side, we have two components, an Army side and an Air side, as do just about all the 54 states and territories in the District of Columbia. They're commanded by a one-star general. And on the Army side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Barry Dibert. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's Brigadier General Ed Lewis. On the Air side, it's most of the funding for the National Guard comes from the feds. It's about 95 to 96% of our funding is federal. That really stemmed from the Militia Act of 1903, when the United States sort of figured out that there was vast disparity in between the National Guards and their readiness following the Spanish-American War. So what they decided to do was try to even that out and enhance the training of each of the National Guard. So most of the funding you'll see now for the National Guard of the United States comes on the federal side. Along with that is this sort of differentiation. Status really makes a difference in the National Guard. So we normally are in what we call Title 32, United States Code Title 32, which means we are paid federally, but we are under the command and control of the governor of the state. So Governor Gordon. Usually we are under the command and control of the governor. Now, when we deploy in support of operations overseas, we fall under Title 10, just like our active component brothers and sisters. We work for the president at that point. We are removed from the National Guard of Wyoming, and we then move under the President of the United States. Authorities make a difference there. There are certain authorities we have in Title 32 that don't apply to us in Title 10 and vice versa. And so status really matters as you go forth in Wyoming. Our strength we have a force structure on the Army side of about 1,600 personnel. On the air side, about 1,380 people. On the air side, we're primarily based around a C-130 airlift wing, although we do have some other components underneath of that I'll talk a little bit. On the Army side, the largest headquarters that we have is a Field Artillery Brigade, which is currently deployed, the 115th, and then we have two subordinate battalions underneath that. One of them is a HIMARS rocket battalion, and then we've got a brigade support battalion, and then we have some smaller company-sized units sort of spread out in there. We are the 9th largest land area state in the Union, and we have the smallest force structure based on our population, except for the Virgin Islands and Guam. So fairly small in comparison to other force structures in the U.S. So that's sort of kind of overall what we have is the structure of that and how's that done. Is there any questions I can answer in terms of what that looks like before I move on to some more updates?
Representative Larson.
Thank you. On that last comment, when you talked about landmass size and then population of the Guard, is what dictates, is the population just based on how many recruits you can get, or are you limited? Or tell me how that works.
Yes, sir. Chairman Pappas, to Representative Larson, a couple of different factors play into that. Right now, the size of the Army and the Air Force is pretty well fixed, and the size between the National Guards is pretty well fixed. We have about 335,000 billets across the 54 states and territories. That's called force structure. They're divided into the states, and that's largely based on what they can recruit to. Prior to the War on Terror, there was much less emphasis on states being able to fill their formations. The Guard at that time was a strategic reserve. We didn't think we would really ever go to war unless the big one came. And so units that were sometimes at 50% strength, 60, 70, 80% strength, it wasn't much of a worry. Once we did the global war on terror and virtually almost every unit in the Army National Guard has deployed, we began to say we have to have full units in order to get them out the door. So the ability for a state to recruit and fill up a unit is critical now to their ability to keep it. And so we have slowly kind of come down over the years that I've been. I remember a high point of about 1,907 soldiers. Tim, you may remember different, about 1,907 soldiers. We've slowly come down over the years as our population has sort of contracted. We've come out of several armories, Newcastle, we no longer have Cody, we no longer are there. Rollins, we're no longer there. Riverton, Thermopolis, quite a few. And so we seem to be 1,600 seems to be about right for us at the moment right now. So on the Army side, Air is strictly in Cheyenne. They are also coming to the realization that we have to have full units there for the same reasons that you got to deploy full units to the warfight.
And so then you talked about the land mass that you oversee. So is our force adequate for the land mass you have responsibility for?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, no, we are not large enough to do what I think we're going to need to do if the worst day comes. One of the other interesting things that we have is we're less of a community-based organization than we used to be, in that because of the job situation in many of our communities, when they come to drill, we import a lot of our soldiers, particularly into a communities. So like in Star Valley, for example, we have very few soldiers that actually live in Star Valley. So the 130 or 176 folks in that infantry company, a lot of them come into that location. So I would like to, if I had to wave a magic wand, I would certainly like to be in more areas of the state and be able to keep more people local. But that's just not the reality that we face right now, sir.
And I think it depends, the land mass really is not a direct correlation to the mission. So the missions, as the general said, you have to recruit to the missions. And a lot of our recruits come from out of state, certainly from the surrounding states. I remember when I was in there, I had one gentleman come from Guam every drill.
Right.
So and also the missions are typically federal. Most of the missions that we deal with, we train to federal missions and we're deployed quite frequently to federal missions. Yes, we do have state emergencies and state missions, but certainly the number of troops on the ground is correlated to the type of mission we have, not the landmass.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I think that's very well said. I do think of the state missions in our response domestically a lot. That's along my mind. And I also think that being in the Guard and in the community is just a benefit. I think we have some outstanding people that are coaches and teachers and really have positive impacts to the community. And the more that we have out there, I just think it makes us stronger communities and a stronger state.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a setup nationally to draft for the National Guard, or is it just for the regular Army?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, so when you say draft, so the National Guard, I'll tell you, we recruit ourselves. So we don't rely on the active component in either the Army or the Air to do our recruiting. We do that ourselves. Colonel Leone and Sergeant Major, that's their job to do that. Now, as terms of a draft, that's a difference that actually we don't really have much to do with the draft piece. That's a separate function on the Selective Service, and they would draft for the entire Department of Defense if they were to do that, if I understood your question correctly.
Follow up? I was saying, is a draft set up so that you could get draftees in the national draft? I know they go to the regular Army, but does the National Guard, get any of those? Or can they?
Mr. Chairman, or Senator Anderson, I think what we would see if we went to the draft, you'd probably see a federalization of the entire National Guard, that everybody would actually become one force, Title 10 force, which they would come under. If we didn't do that and just say we were drafting and everybody would go, I think we would still be in charge of our own recruiting. We would have to go recruit them ourselves. Any people that were drafted would go to an active component. But if we got to that level of a mobilization, I think everybody's in. The reserves get activated, the Guard gets activated, all of us go in one, and you're basically recruiting to the entire whole, if that makes sense, sir. All right, let's go to the next slide. I'd like to start off almost every time that we brief you with just a quick threat posture to give you a sense of where our focus is and what's going on. I'm going to have Sergeant Major brief this, but the big thing I wanted you to take away here is this idea of the first and second island chains, which I think you almost have to kind of see to have an appreciation for them. I know I didn't have that appreciation until I actually saw on the map what China is trying to do in that particular event. So let me very quickly turn over to the Sergeant Major so he can run us through a quick intel brief.
Hey, good afternoon, and once again, I'm Command Sergeant Major Thad Eady. Yeah, this slide, really what we want to highlight from it is when DoD makes strategic decisions and directions, it's influenced by what we see on this slide right here. China is our, near peer adversary, and the map that we see is really focused on that Indo-PACOM area, that region. And China's at the middle of that. And China wants to have influence direct influence of all those countries in that region and that area. And that goes into the first island chain and the second island chain that General Porter was talking about. That first island chain, that strategic target for them is to have full control of Taiwan. They've been very vocal about that and have actually put a date out there of when they may want to achieve that. So that's a concern. But then it's also what other countries are in that first island chain. It's the Philippines and also to the north, Japan. And then Japan is that kickoff part to the second island chain where Guam is in that area. So really, when we look at that and we look at what are the strategic decisions that DOD is making, we have to look at what does that next fight look like? And how does the DOD need to modernize its units and the equipment to achieve success? And within the area, what we're looking at is how do we build relationships with the countries in there, with the Philippines and Japan, so that our relationship with them pulls that relationship towards us and not to China.
As you look, the administration coming in, that was their real focus, is the Indo-PACOM area of operations. That is where they're trying to deter China. And so if you look at that first island chain, you see Taiwan is right in line there. And that is a great concern to China. And the whole purpose right now of the administration, they've not had a published out their national defense strategy yet. But if you look at it, it is to not deny China access in the first and second island chains. And so to deter them taking Taiwan, that is the primary thing that we try to do. So we do a lot of deterrence actions to get that done. So China just claimed a small island out in the Island K, if you recall that had been disputed with the Philippines. They just decided, they just took it over the other day and said, hey, it's ours now. They did a pretty, an unanticipated exercise about 3 weeks ago in the South China Sea in the Taiwan Strait that that caught our attention. And they continue to be pretty aggressive. The date that Sergeant Major talked about is Xi Jinping said, hey, I want to be ready to take Taiwan by April of 2027. That's my idea. And so we're probably, as the United States and our allies, a little late to coming to counter that. So there is a lot of emphasis and resources being put to counter that as we go forward. Administration's primary is Homeland Defense. So you can see where the president has come out and talked about Golden Dome and be able to defend that, secure the border, counteract China. Those are the three things that they're after, and that's what they're going after. So that's kind of the road we're going on here. And I tell you that to say we're still stuck in CENTCOM, though. We've got units in Central Command in Kuwait and Jordan and United Arab Emirates. We're spending time there still. And even though we keep trying to pivot to Indo-PACOM, a lot of our time is still spent in the CENTCOM area of operations. Before I get there, were there any questions on this slide and where we're at?
Yeah, General, are we still doing training with the folks in Hawaii, was it 25th?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, we don't have that habitual relationship with the brigade. Used to have the habitual relationship with the 115th. That's not the case anymore. We don't do very much with them yet, although I can see it coming back as we start to realign. The brigade's going to move. Right now, they're with the 34th Infantry Division out of Minnesota. They're going to become a First Corps asset, and First Corps has got an Indo-PACOM trace. And so we could, 25th is one of the First Corps subunits, so we could go that way again. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just wanted to address the gigantic elephant in the room, but thanks for getting us some J's.
Yeah, I was gonna come to that, sir, but thank you. Yeah, it was, great teamwork. Yep. All righty, well, let's go through real quick. Air Guard mobilization dates, you've got the slides. I won't spend much time here. I will tell you, though, that where the Air Guard 153rd's focus is, they're going to deploy in the fall of 2026. And they are going to be the first construct of what they call a deployable combat wing that's going to deploy to someplace. Deployable combat wings, a different way that we've not mobilized on the air side before. We're going to take half of a wing, in this case, it's going to be from the Ohio National Guard, and we're going to take half of a wing from Wyoming, and we're going to put them together, and we're going to make them a combat wing in there to deploy. The interesting thing is it's going to be two different kinds of aircraft. Ohio's going to have F-16s, and we're going to have C-130s. So this is going to be an interesting way to do it. We'll be one of the very first Guard units that does what they call the DCW, and so that's taken a lot of time because the Air Force is transforming, and for the new fight coming away from the global war on terror to large-scale combat operations. And so it's a different way that they're organized. So we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out how we do that. So that's probably the big thing for the air. Army Guard, big deployment right now. Not our biggest. We probably got just short of a third of our Army force structure deployed right now. That's had an impact on us. I have about 60 full-time folks that are deployed with them. And not all of them come from the units that they're with. A lot of them come out of our Joint Force Headquarters and our other units that we had to cross level to get full units out the door. So it's been an impact to our ability to operate in some cases. But they're doing a great job. The governor, myself, Sergeant Major, and the team went over to see them 2 weeks ago. Interestingly enough, the day before we were going to get ready to leave, the Chief of Staff of the Army called the governor's office and said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you before you go." And we were like, "Oh boy, what is that going to be about?" Have the Chief of the Staff of the Army call. And so went with the governor and we talked to him, and he just said, "Hey, listen, I just came back from UAE and got to see your soldiers over there. And let me tell you, they were doing an outstanding job. I just want to tell you what a great group of folks you have." So Governor and I are like, whew. Of course, we knew that was what it was the whole time. But I thought it was very kind of General George to reach out and do that. At the same time where we were in country, the CENTCOM, the Army CENTCOM, or the Army Central Command Commander, General Franks, Lieutenant General Franks stopped in and said, "Hey, sir, just want to let you know that your guys are doing an outstanding job. 115th, that they've connected sensing all across the northern tier there. They're doing it better than anybody we've said before. So I think you can be very proud of the Wyoming Guardsmen that are over there." We usually get accolades. We always get accolades wherever we deploy, but this is the first time that I've had a 4-star and a 3-star take their time out of their day to tell the governor, "Hey, thanks for what you're doing." So that's what's going on. Hey, domestic support, a lot of stuff going on. We did send some folks out to presidential inauguration, just short of 70 personnel. They had a great time and did great things out there. It was great opportunity for them to be able to serve and see the presidential inauguration. You may have noticed that the California fires, we actually deployed 3 aircraft, MAFS aircraft, out to California in January, which we haven't done before. Usually, that's a summer mission in wildfires, but it was so bad this year that they actually activated MAFS. Again, Wyoming did an outstanding job. Normally, we provide 2 aircraft. One of the wings actually had another mission someplace else, so our team actually picked up an extra aircraft, mobilized it, and got it out to California prior to the date that was set. So another great job. The Wyoming Airmen are doing outstanding. Yes, sir.
Just a question. Is that why we had 2 number 1 MAFS units? Okay.
Yes, sir. That's exactly why. You probably noticed the tails on it were different. Yes, sir. That's why. And lastly, I'll just tell you, when the fight comes and it's coming, we're fighting in cyber every day, in space every day. There's going to be a fight here in the homeland. What that looks like, whether that's disrupted power, whether that's cyber attacks, where that goes, it's going to be here. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about how we would react as a Guard to protect the residents of the state. So we're spending a lot of time going through that right now, thinking, what happens on the worst day as we get that going. So that's the quick update there. I'm going to, in the interest of time, and if you go to the next slide on 2 of 3, this is stuff I've briefed you before. If there's not any questions, I'll go to the next slide.
I do have a question. Just looking at Air Guard. Do you see now that since we've gotten the new aircraft, or going to get the new aircraft, do you see the possibility of an active associate unit coming back to Wyoming?
Senator Pappas is the chair. What he's referring to is prior to the active component were the only ones, they pure fleeted C-130Js. So they got the new aircraft, this what they call the J aircraft, the C-130, all went to the active component. Prior to that, we had an active associate. There was an active unit, C-130H 2s at the time, I believe, unit in Wyoming. And so we were together. We had basically two wings in Wyoming, Cheyenne, Wyoming. And they call that an active association. When you take an active and a guard and you put them together to do that. So when they pure fleeted Jays, it's a different aircraft. It's 20 feet longer, it operates different, the crew's different. So no longer did they have common aircraft, so the associations all went away from the National Guard. So what the senator is asking is, once now everybody gets a J, do we get an active associate back? I think it's a possibility. I have not seen a great desire from the active component yet to go back to active associates in the C-130 community. Not that just because it got smaller through that time. I think they're doing it in a lot of other places. The bombers, they're considered doing that as they stand that up, but I have not seen a great desire for C-130s yet. We'd be open to it. We think it's great. And actually, we actually are able to leverage a lot of recruiting from them because I think we're a great organization and we take some of their folks, but I don't know that there's anything in the near future.
I think the idea is in theater, we fight together, we fly together, we should train together.
Yes, sir. Yep. I know that, I don't want to speak for them, but the Air Force is looking at, they would like to have a smaller footprint with bases and that sort of thing overall. A tremendous amount of their budget is spent sustaining places out there. They would like to collapse a little bit, and active associates is one way to do that, since we already have the facilities there and we're going to maintain those facilities. They would like to get out of that, but that's a big lift when you start talking BRAC again and what that means to folks. We'll see what the appetite of the American people is for that. All righty. Like I said, those are just some projects that we did. Things are going well there, although we're starting to see for military construction, significant reduction coming to the National Guard. So it's like only 5 projects across the Army National Guard next year for military construction, which isn't helpful at all. Let's go to the next slide. Real quick, let me go down the good news story. So as Representative Brown said, we just were notified a couple of weeks ago that Wyoming was selected to receive the C-130J aircraft. So that was great news for us. We've been over a decade, we've been in that competition, and finally we're selected. I will tell you, I think General Pirak, who is the acting director of the Air National Guard, came out to Wyoming last summer during Cheyenne Frontier Days. We got to host him. We actually borrowed a C-130J from Texas and we stuck it in our hangar. And we showed him that had been our biggest sticking point, to say, hey, we don't think your facilities, you can handle J's. And so our crafty wing commander, Brian Deal, borrowed a C-130J from Texas, stuck it in the hangar, and we just happened to have the director come by and say, what is that plane right there? Oh, that's a C-130J, sir. And look at it, fits in our hangar. And I think that was really the clincher for him. The team did a bunch of a lot of work on recruiting that really helped us, and just the great job that the team did hosting him out there, I really think made a difference, and that was a good deal. So that was probably the biggest thing that we got. We're supposed to get those on the ramp early part of 2028, the second quarter of 28, so January, February of 28. We'll see. They're coming a little slower off the line right now already, so we'll see where it goes, but we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Just to follow up on that.
Yes, sir.
General Porter, what does that mean in terms of personnel, services and enlargement, or with the existing C-130s? How does it fit in for the community?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, there is a difference in crew. The C-130H has a navigator that the C-130J does not, so we'll lose the navigation positions. So that's been coming. As I said, there's about only 3 wings left that are H3s that haven't been converted to J's, so that is going the way of the Dodo, unfortunately. So there'll be less of a requirement for that. Maintenance is a little bit different. The cockpit's a little bit different. It's a little bit longer. It's about 20 feet longer. It has another pallet positions in the airplane, so it's a little bit longer for that. So the biggest thing that we have is we're now compatible with we're starting to really suffer for repair parts because there's so few H3s left in the fleet that all of them are Js. It's difficult to do, so we think that'll be better for us going forward. But new aircraft, and we think overall it's great for us. That get you there, sir?
I think we also lose the flight engineer as well, right?
Yes, sir.
And the weapon systems officer and the flight engineer.
So it's a phasing out of the old and then in with the new, in essence. And so it's not going to be 800 more servicemen. It's going to be, that's
Less.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, less. I haven't seen the documentation on that yet, but it will be less.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, Best Warrior, you want to talk Best Warrior real quick at all? On that one, we got a Best Warrior competition coming up.
Yeah, so we recently had the Wyoming Army National Guard Best Warrior Competition. We selected a soldier, an NCO. It goes through all these different tasks from weapons qualifications to Army combat fitness test to skill level 1, training, that's medical and communications. So we're actually sending those, matter of fact, Saturday, I'm going to jump in a van with our Soldier of the Year and NCO of the Year, and we're going to head to Gallenfield, Idaho to compete in the regional Best Warrior competition. And hopefully out of that, we can move on to the national level. In the past, in the past few years, Wyoming has actually had the national level NCO of the Year and Soldier of the Year. So Wyoming represents very well at the national level.
Cool, thank you, Sergeant Major. All righty, let's get, unless there's any questions about updates and what's going on in the National Guard right now. Tim's going to talk a little bit about the Vets Commission when it comes to him, and we thought we'd put that there, but is there any other questions about? Okay. Before I turn it over to Colonel Leone, I just wanted to maybe set the stage. So back in 2019, the Army Guard, in terms of strength, we were at 100% strength. Probably for the first time that I can, we actually moved up to strength for the first time I can remember in my career. Usually we get to 100% strength by cutting force structure and we come down. So the Air Guard was at about 93%, and I said the Army was 100%. Then COVID happened, and all of the gyrations that came out from that about potentially that service members had to get vaccinated, and that was particularly for those of us here in Wyoming was a very significant event, and we started to see our strength start to drop pretty precipitously. At that time, 3 years ago, I came to this committee and said, hey, listen, I need to do something to turn the strength picture around here because we absolutely have to have full strength units in the state of Wyoming for us to do our mission. And what we proposed at that time was a referral bonus to our folks of $500. If you gave an enlistment or you gave a name that ultimately resulted into an enlistment in the Guard, we gave you $500. The legislature appropriated about $200,000 for us to do that, but we set a sunset date of this for a couple of different reasons. One is just to make sure that this program was being effective for us to get after this bathtub that was created by COVID, and secondly, to give the legislature a very quick opportunity to either turn that on or turn that off. The sunset for this is coming up at the end of the biennium next June, and basically I'm here, the team's here to ask for, at the very minimally, a recertification of this $500 referral bonus. Actually, I'm going to see if you will actually let us bump it up to about $1,000 and to help us keep coming out of this strength slide as we continue to go forward for both of them. And before I take still too much of Colonel Leone's thunder, I'll shut up there if there's not any other questions. And Paul, I'll turn it over to you to brief that.
Representative Larson.
So was that a one-time appropriation for the biennium? And then that wasn't to be included in your next budget, or you're going to have to ask for a new?
General Porter.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, it was not. I think we had a biennium and a half is what that worked out. It was a separate legislation that occurred with that sunset date.
Follow up. And so do you get to carry any of that over, or does it all revert at the end of this?
Mr. Chairman, it reverts, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, committee, thanks for your time and support. I'm glad to be here. As the general said, we're looking to kind of get from a 96% end strength to 100%, and that really comes down to about 5%. So we think that the additional $1,000 will kind of put us to that extra 5% of end strength and kind of get our teams to, complete teams. We're, when we go to deploy in state or federal, we're borrowing folks from other states or volunteers that then will return back to their states after deployment. So we're trying to get our team whole and keep, pushing forward with that fight. So we'd also ask to increase the pool of candidates that could get the referral. Currently, it's for folks that are serving, and we'd like to open it up to our retirees and veterans and give them a shot at that $1,000, hopefully. So if we can go to the next slide. And then
Mr. Chairman?
we talked that already, sir.
Mr. Chairman? So can I ask, what evidence do you have that supports that doubling it will have the effect that you're desiring?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson. So we've looked at other states that have done similar things. North Dakota is a good example. They're in our region, and they recently went from 500 to 1,000. And they did that about a year ago, so they have enough data to support that. They gained over 5%. It's in one of the slides coming up. They are almost at a 10% gain in their end strength. So we have seen that, and a lot of other states do the same thing at the $1,000 level. So there is definitely some correlation between the 500 and 1,000. And I think the population that uses it the most for us is the high school seniors, the folks that have just recently raised their right hand, sir.
Could we ask them to just provide the other states that do that and the breadth of which they allow that to go to? Could we get that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Geringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know of any other states that are maybe using that bonus to go towards high school counselors?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Geringer, so there are some other states that have opened it up to the whole state, and they've seen mixed results. It didn't really correlate to as much end strength gain as I think they had thought, and it's become a quite tedious process to try and pay out someone that's already in the high school, and there's created some conflict of interest within that. So we hopefully avoid some of that, sir.
Great question. Mr. Chairman,
Chairman Brown.
did we extend this to retirees? I can't remember if we did or not, or if that was discussion. And I know that at one point we talked about it, but I can't remember if we ever broached the subject and actually in bill.
We had a bill.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, it failed. It didn't make it to the floor, I don't believe, is what the deal was.
I knew I wasn't sleeping, so.
Got to try again.
Round two. And if we can go one more slide, we'll get into some of the data. So what we're looking at is we do have two of our major units coming back from deployment, and the data shows that when units come back, that folks will typically, not all, but some will get out of the service. They've done their time, they've deployed, and want to do other things. So in conjunction with that, I think that the timing of this would also help kind of refill our units for folks that do decide to get out. And we've kind of looked at both angles as far as, if we kind of stay on our current glide path as opposed to gaining that 5%, and that difference can really get us up to that 100% level of force structure and help going forward. Depending any questions there, we'll keep going. And we also, we don't like to leave the air guard out. So the same thing with them, they're also going to be looking at gaining another additional 5%. And, with the new J models coming in, we want to ensure that they are appropriately manned at that level. So pending any questions on the air side.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the new J model aircraft, you stated there's one less person that is necessary. So what percentage of change would that, I mean, is that what it is? I mean, the total package that would support that aircraft? There's one less person overall, or just could you explain like why you need more people if you're losing people for the aircraft? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Kolb, I'll take that. It's probably outside of the good colonel's area of expertise on the air side there. So each crew will be reduced by, I believe, 3 now is what, 2 for sure, which there's only 8 aircraft in there, so 16. So it's not a significant contraction in terms of what it takes to fly a C-130J. But right now, the air's at about 95% of strength. They're going to deploy in 26. We're going to anticipate further reduction in when they return. So really, I want to drive them up above 100%. So that's what this is getting after, is trying to incentivize more recruits to come in. I'm going to talk a little bit about retaining some here in the next section about a potential extension bonus if the committee is willing to entertain it. But that's what it's after. If you look at the slide, that delta here, we're trying to close that up, and that's what we think that the bonus can help us do. Does that make sense, sir?
All right, and again, this slide shows some of the other states. If we really looked at every state, we'd see the majority have some sort of referral bonus. We kind of picked a few to not drown it out. But again, I think North Dakota is a good indication of what that additional 500 would do for us. And they've already seen that end strength growth. And again, we've used not even half of the previous appropriation for what we were granted. I believe with the $1,000, and if we can open it up to the retirees and veterans, that we would get a lot more efficiency out of that budget and also grow our end strength, pending any questions.
Committee, any questions? Senator, or Representative Larson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So if you didn't use half, if we had been at 1,000, you still wouldn't have used all your budget?
Correct.
Or is my math wrong? And because I'm trying to figure out the justification for the increase of the budgetary request.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, that's correct. If we had been using given the same set of circumstances that the 500 is given, we would not have overdrawn our appropriation.
Further questions, committee? Okay.
Yeah, I can.
So the other legislation that General Porter discussed is a retention bonus, reenlistment bonus. So basically for folks that are getting close to their time of expired term of service, we would give them a bonus to stay in at the 3-year mark. So what we see now is a lot of folks will reenlist for a year at a time, kind of see where they're at. It doesn't give us as much predictability. And then we also lose a lot of experienced folks that we've put a lot of effort and training in that are getting out before they're close to their 20-year term of service. So what we're seeing from other states as well is that they are offering a state reenlistment bonus to keep their experienced soldiers and airmen in formation going forward. And it also kind of closes the back door a little bit where the referral bonus gets folks in the front door. We also want to kind of close the back door a little bit so they're not just going right out the back with a lot of that experience with them.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Senator Anderson.
do we have a reenlistment bonus now?
Mr. Chairman, through Senator Anderson, we do not at the state level. There is a federal bonus that not a lot of our folks would qualify for based on different red tape, but we also are seeing a lot of those federal bonuses dissipating, especially in our current environment. So a lot of other states, I think, are trying to get ahead of what could be a federal reenlistment bonus reduction, sir.
Yeah, a reenlistment bonus to me makes perfect sense, because, I mean, these are trained personnel. You don't have to retrain them. So it's best to hold on to them.
So, Mr. Chairman, what is the current federal reenlistment bonus? And why is there a bunch of red tape on the way? I don't.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nichols, so currently it's $10,000, and it's also at a certain term, you have to extend for 3 years. And so some of the red tape is just with the way it's called a blended retirement service, kind of the new folks that are getting into. So they can kind of get a retirement bonus outside of their reenlistment bonus. And if they sign up for this blended retirement service, it kind of takes them out of the option to get the referral or the reenlistment bonus. So it also, they have to do it within a certain amount of time before they ETS. And we're just seeing a lot of folks that, aren't qualifying for what they should be getting to reenlist. And the federal side is, kind of clamping down on who's eligible. Sir, if that helps.
General Porter.
Sir, and just to amplify that, sir, what you're going to see here shortly from the Army is a reduction in force. If you've seen in the papers, some reports have been up to 90,000 folks in the Army that are going to leave. So the Army writ large is going to be not interested in retaining a lot of folks. Their job is going to be to actually get more folks out. Different problem set for us. So that's one of the reasons that we want this as well. We want to keep our trained personnel in our formation, and all those federal bonuses come from the active Army that we just get to sort of glom onto. Once they decide they're not going to give it just to us as the National Guard, we're sort of left out hanging in the wind on that, sir.
So, and is that, my understanding is that the current administration wants to increase the dollars for military spending. How does that impact on it one way or the other?
So, Mr. Chairman, to Representative Nicholas, a good question. First off, you're going to see that the Army is going to be a bill payer to the other services to get after the Indo-PACOM fight. So they see it primarily as an Air Force and a naval fight, and the place to take money from right now is the Army. About 8% cut this year is what was taken. We'll see. I haven't seen the presidential budget yet for next year, but most of Army leadership is fairly concerned. That's why you're seeing these reports of potentially 90,000 active component Army soldiers coming down, because they're going to take that savings that they get and they're going to push it to Golden Dome. They're going to push it to new aircraft, new ships, that sort of thing. And they see the Army being less relevant and one of the only places they can take resources from.
I would also say it's probably a lot more about contractors getting more money, not necessarily the branches themselves. But that's just the cynic in me.
So if we were to recap that, if there's an interest there, this one's a little bit more expensive. We think we need to retain about 200 folks. We think that's $500,000 a biennium, $1 million total. To recap that, but we think where we get the most bang for our buck is we get to keep our well-trained soldiers and airmen as they come in. If we look at the programs writ large, very much would at least like to sustain the 500. I think we can get more bang for our buck if we are able to go 1,000. I think that's good for our folks, and it really provides an incentive to go out there and recruit. If you look at Wyoming being the ninth largest land area, we simply don't have the recruiters based on our force structure for us to cover the entire state like we need to, where we'd want to be. So what we're trying to engender is more fishermen out there across the states, places where we don't have armories, and that's the thing where our servicemen and women live. We want to be able to recruit there too. So we're trying to cast a broader net to incentivize folks to give us good recruits, and that's probably the crux. We do want to expand a little bit the people that are out there. We want our veterans to be able to take part of this. We want our retirees to be able to take part of this. I was reluctant to go too much further than that just because of the administrative burden of trying to keep track of all these. And we wanted to have some sort of line on the person so we would keep fraud down and that sort of thing. So we knew who they were, we knew what they've been, we knew where the leads got to, and so it's not a free for all that we throw it open, but try to keep it a little bit more manageable in that stuff too. Try to hit that sweet spot between getting more folks in and doing it, but not so much that it overburdens us and we can't process it and keep track of the funds correctly, if that makes sense.
General, just out of curiosity, one of the things that I remember when I was trying to join 15, 20 years ago, there was a huge push for certain MOSs, right? And so has that been something that you guys have seen, that it would be more advantageous to go after certain MOSs with a higher bonus as opposed to just carte blanche, everybody gets 1,000, where you could maybe, the state could get that, I don't know, whatever critical piece that you're missing with a $5,000 sign-on bonus that would give you guys that luxury and that ability? Is that something you guys have looked into?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Co-Chairman, yes, sir. I think when you look at, as we start to increase our strength, the amount of places where we can stick them also starts to decrease too. You know, once we start getting a bunch of, for example, infantrymen 11 Bravos, at some point that becomes an MOS that we can't recruit to. So naturally, we're going to be drawn as we get our strength comes up to bonuses that are difficult to recruit to or low density, what we saw. So I think that's a natural repercussion of this. I'd like to keep it not tied to bonus to start out, just so we can generate the input, but as we continue to do it, it's gonna get to where you said, sir, that it's gonna be smaller bonuses or smaller people that are eligible to get the bonus. Yes, sir.
Okay, any further questions on the recap that the general just gave us? Okay, let's continue.
All right, I think I'm ready to bring up Mr. Shepard for his portion, and we'll talk really quickly statutory update, and he'll give an overview of the Vets Commission. Tim?
There we go. All right. Good afternoon, gentlemen and ladies. Tim Shepard, I'm the Executive Director for the Wyoming Veterans Commission. And the first item that we have is a statutory update. It's basically, this came to us from a coroner out of Fremont County who said, hey, did you realize there's kind of a loophole in the language? To which I said, no, I didn't have an idea of that. But the issue is the reimbursement for burials of indigent veterans, and to remove the term in time of war or conflict limitation for burial. So now I can tell you the good news is, under the discussion, that no county has refused to bury an indigent veteran regardless of that phrase that basically currently says they'll be a combat veteran. And if they're a combat veteran, you have to do that. So what we're saying is just eliminate that and make it indigent veteran, so that there is no issue there won't ever be an issue. So it's really more of a, I would call it almost a clerical fix to the language, just to prevent any type of future problem. Can I answer any questions?
Questions, committee? Representative Larson. Microphone, please.
Thank you. Maybe you're not there yet. What's the conversation with DFS? It says discussion, this requires conversation, Department of Family Services.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, I can answer that. As we were kind of doing a little quick study of this, we realized that the people that were going to have to pay the bill is the DFS is in statute. I didn't have that conversation with him yet. So before, when we come back to the next meeting, I'll have an answer from them about how much they think. It's got to be de minimis. It can't be much, but I didn't want to commit them to it without having further discussions with them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because I thought the indigent burial for DFS was for those families that were currently receiving SNAP benefits.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, that could be, when we looked at the statute, that's where the money came from. So, but I didn't catch it until late in the game. So that's why I recommended that that I still need to have a conversation with them to make sure that I'm not putting a bill in there.
I will as well. I recall a little bit of that, but happy to visit with you on it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, how does all this fit in with the Veterans Cemetery out here? We bury them there for free, don't we? It wouldn't have to go through this process. A county wouldn't have to do it. We can bury them right here.
Mr. Chairman, for the senator, they still go through a county. Every indigent, wherever they died, the process works through that county to get to whatever is the final resting place for the indigent.
Okay.
Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for answering the question about, has anyone ever denied, payment? I think the argument, though, or the situation is broader than what you're painting. This is about everybody. This is about everybody who's indigent. I mean, that's the way the county looks at it. It isn't to do with really in particular, they wouldn't let anyone just not be buried. So I think it's a broader issue than just pigeonholing it into one slot. I think it's a broader issue. If we're gonna, and I don't know if this is the right committee even to bring it up when it's a broader issue, but because it hasn't been an issue. And we, balanced to the fact that we have a lot of other issues, I just wonder, what are we doing? So I guess, what are your thoughts about it being a broader issue than just veterans? I mean, the indigent people are indigent people, frankly, I think in the county's view, and they're not here to speak on it, but what are your thoughts on that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just to that point, you're right, it could be a broader issue, but there is statute. There is statute that addresses veterans. And so that's all they're doing is, we've already got the statute. They're just dropping combat out of the word combat out of the statute. So you have a valid point, though.
Mr. Chairman, for the senator, I don't disagree with you. I also agree with the chairman that we brought this up specifically because it falls under military statute. And so it's very specific to indigent veterans and not the broader topic of indigents at large.
Okay, further questions, committee? Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll move on to our commission overview and update. I am very proud of the Wyoming Veterans Commission. I think that there is great work going on within the commission, and the people who do that work are the supervisors and the people on the ground. Our 12 commissioners The good news story is we're authorized 12 commissioners. We have 12 commissioners in place. They've been in place for a while now. Each of them works very well within their area and does a great job representing what's going on within the area and also to help resolve problems for veterans in the area. Our service officers, we think of as our primary full-time asset to help veterans. And they're really the people on the ground that make the difference. Could I steal your water? Okay. But they really make the difference. Sorry about that. I'm getting tongue-tied here.
It's okay.
All right, thank you, sir. Oh, that's better. So the service officers are the point people when a veteran calls us and says, hey, I have an issue, I'm not sure my disability claim is right. Immediately we say, all right, let's get you with a service officer and have that service officer help you resolve that issue. And they do a tremendous job. I will tell you, I am adamant about things like phone calls and answering emails, and they get a lot of phone calls, they get a lot of emails. They actually have time budgeted to make sure that they can return those things, because one thing that I have heard from veterans over and over again is, you know what, I can't think of anything that troubles me more than to try to get a hold of somebody who's supposed to help me and they won't get back to me. And so we are adamant that that's a prime responsibility you have. If you have to schedule an appointment for a couple of days later because you need that admin time to do it, you do it. But we make sure we take care of veterans, and they do a great job of doing that. Our Veterans Feeding Veterans program continues strong. Just as a reminder, that program, we offer a $150 food card for an individual veteran. We offer a $250 card for a veteran with family, and that's for anyone who is food insecure. And we define food insecure as simple as if you have to make a decision, do I pay my rent or do I buy food, you're food insecure, and we're willing to help. So it's helped over 1,000 veterans, well over 1,200 families. This is a great news story, and some of it goes back to what we worked through the legislature. I think it's 2 sessions now ago, where we added 2 positions to the Wyoming Veterans Commission, and one of those was a position at the cemetery. And so we jumped on that. We hired that position. I'm not going to say that that's the sole reason that we had the success that we had at the cemetery, but it has a lot to do with it. And I want to do a shout out to Mr. Darren Brahaney for his great leadership there. But they are recognized as the best of the best within the circles of the VA. And I think for any of you who have had the opportunity to come out there, and I see Senator Anderson, that facility just continues to improve, which I didn't think it could, but it looks even better today than it did yesterday. So they're doing great things there. Our highly rural transportation program, we took a little bit of a hit. My guidance to the program has been go, go, go. If there's a veteran who needs a ride, get them a ride. And we will work on the funding later. And so the time came up. We're pushing that program. We asked for additional funding, and that request was rejected. So unfortunately, in our highly rural transportation, we're actually having to slow down a little bit. But what we're attempting to do is look at it from an overhead standpoint and to reduce how much overhead we have involved with the program. So we're not open as long each day, so shorter hours for the manager. We had an assistant manager who we said I think we're going to have to cut that for the remainder of this grant cycle. What you didn't hear was, hey, what you will hear is that we will continue to provide rides for veterans to and from their VA and VA-approved appointments. Veterans Talking to Veterans, that's the program we started 3 to 4 years ago. We had 26 coaches. We're now up to 45 coaches. We continue to see where the program makes a tremendous difference, not only just for veterans to have the opportunity to voice an opinion, to be heard, but we have had well over now 50 instances where we have been able to stop a suicide attempt. So we see that was not the original intent of the program, but it sure is a great benefit. Our records section, again, great director, Casey Nix, doing great things there. She goes above and beyond. She and her staff to make sure that if a veteran is trying to find a record, if we have the record, we make sure we get them the record. If we don't have the record, we talk about the process for them to obtain that record. She stays with them throughout the process to ensure that if they haven't gotten the record, that they know what the next step is to try to do that. So the last thing that I have listed there, there's one other that I want to talk about though, and that's the other position that you approved 2 sessions ago, and that's the Deputy Director of the Veterans Commission. We put a lot of time and effort into selecting that individual, and she just happened to be one of our veteran service officers, and she was the best of the best. Showed a skill set well beyond that necessary for a service officer. And so we hired her as the deputy, and she has just been brilliant. 2 weeks ago, we conducted our first veteran symposium where we brought in organizations that support veterans from around the state and gave them a forum to sit together, to share a couple of meals together, to talk about veterans issues, to talk about the strengths of our veteran support and where we might have some weaknesses. It was a great event. The governor was there, handed out some awards to some of the agencies. So it's a home run. And I think the bottom line is we'll be able to help more veterans in more ways as a result of the results of that symposium and moving forward. So we'll continue to do that. And that's largely thanks to Sandy McFarland, our Deputy Director. The last thing, and this is one I'm working with Sandy, TAP at the installation level, the Transition Assistance Program, it doesn't work well. There's a lot of reasons why. I'm not going to belabor the point, but the point is this: veterans come out from service and they're not ready to be a veteran. And the idea of the Transition Assistance Program is that you're getting them ready to be a civilian, to be a veteran. Where I can most lay my hat and say, this is a big problem, is the highest percentage of veteran suicides occur in their first year after leaving service. So that tells me we've got a serious problem that we need to address. So what we've talked about is to have a program that we would call Veteran Transition Assistance Program, not TAP, And the idea of that is to get veterans within their first year of leaving service and to offer them education and training, again, on how to do the transition. And hopefully have a little more empathy on their part of why this is important to them and what are the things now that they're out that they didn't listen to during TAP that they might really want to listen to during VTAP. And that's the idea, is to give them that platform to do that. And with that, I would answer any questions.
Committee, any questions for Mr. Shepherd? Representative Larson?
Can we go back, Mr. Chairman, to the indigent burial?
Sure. Any questions?
So in 2021, we had House Bill 29, and typically in DFS, there's indigent burial that's provided for families who are receiving public benefits, SNAP or TANF. In that, in 1914-101, we talk about the counties reimbursing DFS for the burial. And it says, the body and transmission of a burial to in the veteran cemetery of any other than a dishonorably discharged of the armed services of the United States who has served in behalf of the United States in any war or conflict is defined in the section. And so I think that's in this bill, and there's I think Representative Nicholas can remember there was two confusing programs in DFS. One went to the county for indigent burial, and it talked about the veterans, and that's probably the one that we're referring to. And then there was a separate program, and that's what we was trying to get cleared up. I sent Eve a memo on that, but if you look back also in 2021, House Bill 29, it kind of gives you the origin of both of them, and maybe we can move from there, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else, committee? Okay, thank you, Tim. General Porter.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, just to close, I often talk to you about the purpose of the Wyoming National Guard is to serve as the sword and the shield for the state and nation. The sword indicates what we have to do as the primary combat reserve for the Army and the Air Force. We have to be able to deploy, and we have to be able to win in the battle space. The shield is our mission here at home. That's what we do to protect the residents, save lives, alleviate suffering, make sure that our residents are safe. We don't have very many asks this budget session in terms of going forward, but what we are asking directly goes to that. My commitment is, if you are willing to support a retention bonus and a referral bonus, that we will provide you 102% guard that's capable of doing both of those things. And as the shape of the world continues to do that, I think it's going to be very, very important for us to do. And that's the priority of this organization, is to make sure that we can do that. And I would appreciate your help in helping us keep the numbers in our formations to where they need to be. We certainly would like to clean up the language on the indigent burial, but if this committee in this budget session decides that we need to maybe wait until the next session to do that, I don't think that you would have much we would certainly go with that, and we'll put that in the topic later, given the constraints of time. So I appreciate the support of the committee. I appreciate the support to the military of all the citizens and residents of Wyoming. What they do for us day to day, every time we're out in the community, they do nothing but express their appreciation to our soldiers and airmen that serve out there, and it's great. And that's a lot to do with the leadership of this committee and your support. Sir, I think that's all I have. I'll stand by for any questions that you and the team that may have for us.
Okay, well, thank you. I know I think we'll have some committee directives here in a minute, but before we do, I'd like to open it up for public comment.
Yes, sir.
If there's anybody that would like to speak to any of these issues today, please come forward. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, Joey Correnti. I am the Executive Director of Rural Wyoming Matters, informational, educational, and advocacy group out of rural Wyoming. I'm also a retired combat veteran, 100% total permanent disabled, and I retired out of the Wyoming National Guard. A few things I heard today maybe weren't explained in common parlance that taxpayers or even legislators would be drawn towards supporting. And I'll tell you one thing, I'll talk on the Army side, things change in the Army all the time. Sergeant Major Eady was my troop commander, or troop command sergeant major, and that troop command doesn't even drill in that building anymore. While I was in a unit that isn't even part of the Wyoming National Guard anymore, and I've only been retired 8 years, things change. When they started the slideshow, I saw that awesome rocket launcher thing. Well, that one had wheels, the one I used to work on had tracks. So things change. A couple things that don't change is the recruiting and retention requirements to make our troop requirements. The numbers might change, but the processes in recruiting and retaining stay the same. The other things that don't change is our need to be able to support and help our veterans. So I want to break down some of these numbers common language. We talked about a $1,000 recruiting bonus for an individual that brings somebody to the recruiter station, they become a soldier. I'm assuming there's going to be some requirement of passing AIT or being a successfully certified soldier. I don't think that's a whole lot, because if you take that and base it on the basic 3 to 4 year contract before they're eligible for the reenlistment bonus of $5,000 they're talking about, you're looking at $6,000 over 6 years. Now for an M-Day soldier, which is the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks during the summer, 228 days over those 6 years, if they do the bare minimum, $26 every day they serve. Now that's not just to get them in and keep them in. With that investment, what I see is addressing the issue of brain drain and people leaving Wyoming. When you recruit Wyoming citizens to be Wyoming soldiers, and you offer them the training, the job opportunities, and the educational opportunities that we have here in Wyoming through the Halfway Scholarship, Army ROTC. I believe there's still tuition assistance while you're serving in the National Guard before you qualify for your post 9/11 GI Bill. So there's tons of opportunities, and the legislature has also helped in making those things applicable to things like tech schools. So we're not just getting people into our Wyoming National Guard. We're keeping our people in Wyoming and training them to not only have usable job skills, but functional life skills that makes Wyoming better. So I would say 1 week in a month, 2 weeks during the summer for the bare minimum at $25 a pop, that's a good investment, return on investment for Wyoming's future. Just my personal opinion. The other thing was, I believe Chairman Brown brought up a MOS-specific recruiting bonus. None of these specifically talk about a recruiting bonus for the enlisted personnel, but that may not be a bad idea for a separate bill, saying we either have a low-density need or a unit that is falling short heavily on its MOS recruiting. But I think to kind of keep the layers of the onion separate, that would have to be its own bill. And again, I just don't know if we can get a better return on investment for the state of Wyoming, since we're already talking about other issues like brain drain, population loss, employment and employability, bringing businesses to Wyoming. You have well-trained, military-trained soldiers, airmen in the state of Wyoming that are willing to work. Those businesses are going to say that's where our workforce is. Another concern that was brought up was the indigent veterans burial. I don't know what the answer is there. I see it kind of as duplicative language. We love to recognize and honor our veterans, but if indigent services are already being handled by the county for indigent people, maybe that could be a repealer on that specific statute while working with the military department and looking into maybe cross-training and certifying some, they might not be this anymore, but 92 Mike's mortuary service out of Charlie Med or a couple of our other units, because that specific statute talks about the transport of remains to a veteran's cemetery. And the transport of veterans' remains is very sacred. And so within our honor guards and within our medical staff, we maybe have the ability to train and certify mortuary services, NCOs and officers that could properly conduct that transport. Because if the county coroner is doing it now, I'm not saying they're doing it wrong. I'm saying there may be a few veteran-specific honors that might be missed. I know there was one more in here, but, oh, the one that didn't come up. This may be coming up later, but the Veterans Services Benefits, I work as a independent veterans advocate. I'm very familiar with CFR 38 and the limitations on me asking for money or even taking gifts when I'm helping veterans with their out processing, mostly with their Veterans Affairs stuff. I believe Representative Posey brought it up earlier. A lot of this can be handled without being concerned about violating the law, appropriating funds to recompense people who volunteer, but look to your veteran community, especially in the rural areas, and help them do, in the Army, we call it train the trainer, but help them network the networker. We don't need money. We need access to phone numbers and information that we can share with other veterans to help them get the services they've earned, because these aren't entitlements. These are earned benefits. And the people that are out there in the veteran community that are willing to do it for free is just amazing. So I don't know that we would have to have a whole lot of appropriation or legislation, but maybe some expanded conversations and any consideration you give to that total package, $1,000 to get them in, $5,000 to keep them, Wyoming's going to make its money back on that tenfold. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you for your comments. We will be bringing up compensation for veterans benefit matters next. So committee, any questions? Thank you for your testimony. Is there any further testimony out there? I know we had two people scheduled online. I don't know if they wanted to talk veterans issues or they were there for WYDOT issues.
They're not. Mr. Chairman, they're not online currently.
They're not online, okay. So we'll close public comment, and I will ask the committee for any. Representative Geringer.
Mr. Chairman, would now be an appropriate time to make a motion?
It would.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll combine two topics into one, but asking for separate draft legislation for both the referral and retention bonuses as presented.
Okay, do I have a second? Second, Representative Larson. Any discussion on that? I think it's pretty clear. I think they presented the topic well enough, and two separate pieces of legislation, trying to wrap them up into one. We've seen them die like that, so that sounds good. Okay, so all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, well, we'll look forward to seeing those pieces of draft legislation. Would anybody, yes, Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to make a motion that we have our staff draft a copy on the indigent burial. In reviewing that, I think that's very appropriate to just remove that language that says they have to have been in a war or conflict. It works very well.
Second. Okay, it's been seconded by Co-Chairman Brown. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, look forward to that bill as well. Any further? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to compensation for veterans benefit matters. Who's going to be presenting? It's going to be Talise. Talise, you're going to present this? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, Staff Attorney LSO, presenting the topic summary on the veteran benefits matters and receiving compensation for providing services, which is provided in your packet. So federal law governs who may help claimants submit veteran benefit claims to the United States Department of Veteran Affairs and who may receive compensation for providing such services. Only persons accredited by the VA may assist claimants in the preparation, presentation, and prosecution of their claims for VA benefits. The VA is authorized to provide accreditation to representatives, agents, and attorneys. Accredited representatives who work for veteran service organizations recognized by the Secretary of Veteran Affairs are prohibited from receiving fees for claimants for providing services for veteran benefit claims. However, accredited representatives who do not work for veteran service organizations, accredited agents, and accredited attorneys may receive reasonable fees only after the agency of original jurisdiction has made an initial decision on a claim. These accredited persons may impose a fixed fee, hourly rate, a percentage of benefits recovered, or a combination thereof. There are restrictions on the amount of fees that may be charged by these accredited representatives, agents, and attorneys. Although federal law prohibits unaccredited persons from receiving compensation for preparing, presenting, or prosecuting veteran benefits claims, the VA lacks enforcement tools. The VA lacks enforcement tools because criminal penalties were eliminated from the statute by Congress in 2006. As a result, states have enacted legislation to fill the gap and provide the Attorney General with an enforcement mechanism to prevent unaccredited persons from charging money for providing such services. 8 states, Illinois, Iowa, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, and Washington, have enacted legislation prohibiting unaccredited persons from receiving compensation for advising or assisting any person regarding any veterans' benefits matter. These 8 states have varying degrees of penalties for violating their state law. Most of the states provide that a violation of the statute constitutes a violation of that state's Unfair Practices Act. As of the date of the topic summary, there has only been one case challenging one of those states' statutes. And that was in 2024. The constitutionality of New Jersey's statute was challenged in federal district court. The challenge was under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution for violating free speech. The court found that it satisfied the immediate scrutiny standard and that it did not, that the plaintiffs failed to show a likelihood of success on the merits of their free speech First Amendment claims, so their motion for a preliminary injunction was denied. The topic summary on pages 5 through 7 provides a table of, in 2025, 34 states had introduced legislation during their sessions to prohibit unaccredited persons from receiving compensation for advising or assisting any person regarding any veterans' benefit matter. Of note, Utah's bill passed and was signed by their governor in March of 2025. Wyoming introduced 2025 House Bill 210, but the House did not consider it on committee of the whole. And I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Talise, and thank you for your written report. It was excellent. Co-Chairman Brown.
Mr. Chairman, just to give the whole committee a little bit more background on this, specifically the senators, and why this was brought up, as Talise just mentioned, this was brought by a House member, actually a committee chairman, brought forward on behalf of a constituent. There was an open federal case at that time, and so the discussion between myself and that chairman was to go ahead and pass it out of committee, and then we would work with the majority floor leader at that time to see if we wanted to move it forward. And at that time, moved it out to the floor, and we didn't have a resolution on that case before we got to the point of committee of the whole cutoff. And so it died for, just lack of not knowing whether or not it was worth it to try to pursue pushing this particular piece of legislation through at the time where there was a almost identical language being scrutinized by a federal court. So that's why we had Talise draw this up and put this together for us, so the committee had a little bit better understanding. Now that we have resolution on that particular federal case, it helps us move forward with whether or not we want to carry a bill and whether or not it's going to be challenged in court. So that's what we're doing.
Great. Committee, any other questions for Talise? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, so what is your bill going to do? Is going to say they can't give assistance to the veterans, or what are we after here?
Mr. Chairman, ultimately, I don't want to speak on behalf of the representative who brought the bill, but the bill that was brought forward to us was to basically eliminate anybody charging for the usage of their services and charging benefits or charging fees to and I believe, if I remember correctly, and we have somebody here who's going to go over all of that, but it was the non-accredited people. And there was some agencies out there that are kind of predatory in their practices and trying to help out when we actually have veteran service officers, stuff like that. There's some other people out there that know the system. They built a business on the system, and there's a predatory nature to it in some people's eyes. And so this was basically trying to say, hey, look, if you're going to do that in Wyoming, it's against the law. So that's what we're trying to do.
Mr. Chairman, follow up. So are we saying they couldn't charge the VA or they couldn't charge the veteran?
Well, it would be the veteran. And as you heard at the very beginning of this, there can be a fixed cost, there can be an hourly rate, or there can be an assumption of the amount of benefits. And a lot of times, if I remember correctly from testimony, it was a majority of it is a chunk of that benefits, and they take like 10% off the top right away. And so then you're only getting 90% of your benefits regardless. And so, again, we have a good retiree that has got some really good information for us and provided us some really good testimony. And I'm sure we'll hear from him in public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Larson.
So Talise, what's the difference between a representative and an agent? And I ask that, Mr. Chairman, because I'm wondering, on this bill, I think we need to.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, so under the federal law, a representative is a person who has been recommended by an organization that the Secretary of Veterans Affairs has recognized, which may include national, state, tribal, regional, or local organizations. And agents are people who have met the standards and qualifications under federal law, while attorneys are persons who are members in good standing of the state bar and who have met the standards and qualifications under federal law. The bill, that the Wyoming bill, is basically saying that you can't be an unaccredited person and be providing those services. So if you are someone who is accredited under federal law, you can continue to receive compensation. But if you're not accredited law with the requirements under federal law, then you can't in Wyoming.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Okay.
Sorry for being so hard-headed here.
Okay, Senator.
But if they were not accredited and didn't charge, they could do it. Is that correct? Is that what the law says? So if they're not accredited and they don't charge anybody, then they can give advice?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, my understanding is if you're not accredited, you're not supposed to be providing those services.
Okay.
In the preparation, prosecution, and presentation of claims for benefits, you're supposed to be accredited.
Representative Larson.
So I thought that it said if you're unaccredited, you could give advice, you just couldn't charge for it.
I don't know what would prevent anybody from giving anybody any advice if they're not charging for money.
Right. That's right, yeah.
I also think, and I think it might be a good idea to bring the individual who is bringing this forward and there has some very, very good experience on this. And then we also have, I believe, some other people telling the other side of the story here. We can probably get a much clearer picture if we go to public comment.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Isn't there also an issue with getting the information? Even like if you were, I suppose, attempting to give advice, getting the information on the individual veteran. I'll just say that my background is Sweetwater County. We went through something like this in the county where we had unaccredited people helping folks, and it turned into what we're talking about here about, number one, they didn't have access to the data. They couldn't get the veterans' information. and that was a problem. But more importantly, without that, what advice could you give them? I mean, I think it's an important bill topic. Let me just say that. Thank you for your thoughts about getting the data. I mean, how would they get the data if they don't have the ability from the VA to get said data? I mean, the credentials to get it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, I have no knowledge of any of that.
Okay. Does the Wyoming Military Department want to comment at all? I see the,
Veterans Commission probably has more.
yeah, well, I'm just going down the list. Oh. But I see they're out there, so, but yeah, Veterans Commission, any thoughts you'd want to share on that with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Tim Shepard, Executive Director of the Wyoming Veterans Commission. You know, I look at this and I think in the best interest of the veteran, we're not charging them for these services because the services are available through accredited sources that don't charge. And I think that's the bottom line.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I just wanted that, Karen, did you have any input on this at all? I just wanted the agencies to have any comment first before I open to public comment.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Karen Hinkle. I am the Senior Legal Counsel for the Wyoming Military Department. You know, this is an interesting question because on the one hand, I think there is a desire to prohibit predatory practices for folks who may be vulnerable. On the other hand, I think as Mr. Shepard said, there are people who prefer the option of being able to pay for the services. And so it's a complex issue. I think it's really up to the discretion of the committee which way they prefer to proceed on this. And it's just difficult to balance all the factors. I'm happy to answer any particular legal questions if you have them, but standing by.
Okay, thank you. Questions, committee? Okay, thank you, Karen. Okay, I'll open it up to public comment. If anybody would like to come forward. Please. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman and committee, this is my second time coming before you all. My name is Denton Knapp. I'm a retired veteran, U.S. Army, 30 years active duty. Left Gillette, Wyoming, went to West Point for 4 years, and been out serving since then. I retired in 2017 and moved back to Gillette 4 years ago. And since my time of retirement, I've been working hard to help veterans at the national level down to local. I've served in a lot of different organizations, to include Veteran of Foreign Wars, went to 2 combat tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. And since that time, I've been serving as your Department of Wyoming Veteran for Foreign Wars National Legislative Committee representative. So I go to DC twice a year in March and September and brief Senators Barrasso, Lummis, and Congresswoman Hageman on our needs for national level veteran topics, as well as letting them know what's going on in Wyoming. I work closely with the Veterans Commission and attended their last statewide forum. It's a humbling sacrifice to help our veterans. I'm one of them, and I've gone the whole course, 30 years of service, and then, working through VA for my own benefits, and as well as my father's and others in the community. I am a 100% disabled veteran. I get all my care through VA, and I used a veteran service officer to get that accomplished. Last Wyoming legislative session, you all got briefed on the committee, as a committee on House Bill 0210, which is a prohibition on unauthorized fees and veterans benefits. This is sponsored by Representatives Knapp, Stiver, Tarver, Winter, Senators McEwen, and Smith D. Unfortunately, that bill was amended to continue to allow predatory claims companies to charge veterans for benefits claims assistance in violation of federal law. Under U.S. Code 38, the bill then failed to make it to the House floor, and we're talking about now in the interim. The VFW is concerned that bad actors are preying on veterans by skimming the earned Department of Veterans Affairs benefits. Claim sharks often charge veterans the equivalent of 5 to 10 months of their future disability payments. This is money these veterans may not have, which could put them in debt simply for trying to access their earned benefits. So these are future benefits. This is unethical and illegal, and it's federally illegal. Many of these companies illegally use veterans' login credentials, and as you mentioned, how do they get the information? Many of these companies use those login credentials and ascertain VA websites and call centers. Some charge tens of thousands of dollars from future benefits for their services. If a veteran receives a disability percentage increase years later, often these companies return seeking more money, whether they performed additional work or not. And furthermore, routinely obtain medical opinions from affiliated medical providers, which raises ethical concerns, since they're all in-house. This bill was drafted to reflect the current federal law prohibiting private companies from charging veterans for services provided and obtaining future benefits exceeding requirements for VA accreditation, and limitation on fees set forth in current federal law. Because of the inaction of Washington, D.C., 9 states currently have passed anti-claim shark laws that prohibit charging veterans for initial claims assistance. One is Washington, Iowa, Michigan, New York, Illinois, Nevada, New Jersey, Maine, and Massachusetts. Wyoming would have been the 10th state to do so if this bill had made it out of committee in its original form to go for vote. Amending this bill to allow for organizations to operate in our state while in direct violation of federal law and continue to do so without consequence puts our veterans, their families, and survivors at risk for benefits they have not yet received. You've heard testimony from several companies over the past legislative session, and there are many that claim they are supporting the veterans' right to choose how they obtain services. This is fine if those services are provided within the federal law requiring accreditation by VA, and those fees stay within the cap. If they do not do that, they're breaking federal law. Anyone who assists veterans with the preparation, presentation, or prosecution of VA claims should adhere to established fee caps or be subject to penalties. Therefore, we would support common sense legislation to require that everyone who charges veterans for claims assistance does so under VA accreditation, which ensures they're putting out the right information, and follows legal precedents as would accredited agents and attorneys. So as mentioned, anybody can give advice, and you don't have to be accredited to give advice, but if you're working on a veteran's benefits, law requires you're VA accredited. As of March 5th, Senators Barrasso and Lummis and Congressman Hageman have supported the Guard Benefits Act, which is the federal portion of this, to reinstate penalties for violations of the current law. For some reason, several years ago, the penalties were dropped out of the federal law. So there's US Code 38, which enforces that it's illegal to charge over the cap fees and illegal if you're not VA accredited, but the penalties were dropped. And looking at previous ones, some were $5,000 per incident, 1 year in jail. So one thing we want to do for the Wyoming bill was ensure that penalties were included so that there's teeth, because laws without teeth that aren't enforced are nothing. VFW urges Congress to pass legislation that would prohibit the exploitation of veterans and survivors by unscrupulous claim sharks and strengthen that accreditation system. I urge you all to not compromise, and it is a compromise, by amending this bill to continue the operation of organizations that fail to meet federal requirements. We ask you to honor the contract between government and our veterans. Wyoming has around 44,400 veterans based percentage. We're one of the highest percentage veteran states based on per capita in the United States. Nationally, it's about 7 to 8% across the US. Wyoming, we're sitting about 10 or 11. So we have a lot of veterans here that this means a lot to. I'm representing our Wyoming portion, Department of Wyoming of the VFW, which is the largest veteran organization in the United States, followed by the American Legion, which also supports this. Wyoming should be leading the way for our nation in making the precedents, practice claim sharks, operating outside the law to continue to take the hard-earned benefits of our veterans. No law is effective without enforced penalties. Do the honorable actions, honor this contract to those who served and our nation selflessly and honor that contract, don't feed the sharks. And we got to cowboy up on this. So for all our veterans in the United States here and in Wyoming, we're asking that this be passed across all 50 states. We could be number 10. It's the right thing to do. And based on that, open for any questions you all may have.
Okay, I do have one. I was just looking at House Bill 210 that was presented last year. Did you say there was no teeth in this bill? 'Cause I really didn't see a penalty at all.
So, Mr. Chairman, one thing we're looking at in getting this bill put together, and my brother Chris did sponsor it, and now we're trying to get this pushed through, is I said there's got to be penalties. If Wyoming's going to make a law, there's got to be penalties. One option is waiting until the federal government comes up with their penalties for the bill that's currently going through U.S. Congress. The other option is to go ahead and establish it ourselves and say we're not going to let these people operate in Wyoming, and here's the penalties if you do. The reason that, Mr. Chairman, the reason that we were asking all the states to do this right now is because we're moving at the speed of federal government. It's going faster right now with the new administration, but we're asking states to go ahead and make it illegal, and the federal will follow.
Okay, thank you. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at your next to last paragraph on this page, and you've got that prohibited charging veterans for initial claims assistance. Is there something significant about initial claims assistance as opposed to ongoing claims assistance? Is there some other?
And Mr. Chairman, that stipulation is in the federal U.S. code. For initial, that veteran does not have the benefits yet, and they may not have the money yet. So if they're charged on initial, we're putting them in debt before they've even received their benefits. Now, some of these veterans, in fact, the majority are coming out as enlisted personnel. They don't retire for the most part, and they come out with no pension and no health care. And in getting them to seek their benefits and pay for them by an unaccredited organization, we're possibly putting them in debt right off the bat coming out of the service. First year of service is critical. That's the time that we're most susceptible to mental health issues and suicide, homelessness, other options. And, you know, that's not the majority of the vets, that's a lot of veterans though. That first year is critical. And so what we've done for the Transition Assistance Program, TAPS, is we're asking Congress to ensure that there's a VA accredited person in that Department of Defense 1-week course that you have to take mandatory before you leave the service to get that started early. Right now in Wyoming, our veteran service officers under the Wyoming Veterans Commission serve that purpose, our veteran service officers, and they are VA accredited, and it's free.
Okay, thank you. Further comment, committee? Questions? Thank you, Mr. Knapp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Joey Karenny, still same guy, title still the same. Maybe to amplify some of the things Colonel Knapp said and to answer some of the questions, Senator Anderson, I don't think you're having a hard time wrapping your head around this. I've been dealing with the VA for 15 years, and it took me 12 years to get my full benefit. It's a tough system. That's why I work as a veterans advocate, and I do it for free, and I wouldn't allow anybody to tell me I couldn't advise anybody. But there are issues like HIPAA considerations, and especially when you're charging money. And if you're ever offering legal advice, you better be willing to stand in court with that soldier and tell the judge, I offered this person legal advice. I think some of these things are already illegal. The issue really is the predatory nature. The reason why I would like to see that initial taken out of there, granted, on the initial application for benefits, you're paid back pay from the time that you file until the time they make the decision, and that can really be a big chunk of money. So if you do it for a percentage, it's quite a bit of money you're losing, even if you end up being ahead a year and a half later. But there are subsequent filings that you can do, and from the time you refile for an increase in benefits, the clock starts over and they say, okay, you filed in May, 2 years later, we owe you 2 years of back pay of the increase. Wyoming already does this for free through our Veterans Commission. You already have people, kind of like me, who know CFR 38 like the back of their hand and won't ask to see medical records, won't ask to fill out paperwork on your behalf. They'll just say, hey, here's where you look, here's where you reference, here's where the forms are, and here's where the state's already paying for you to get help. So I think the committee should contemplate very specific language that actually helps people recognize the situation, limits specific things, but doesn't put people like me in danger. What is compensation? Okay, I'm not charging, but I'm sitting at the VFW and a guy's buying me a beer, so okay, fine, I don't drink beer. But saying, I want some advice. Well, does that violate this? I'm receiving compensation. Someone could complain, and because it's me, yeah, they're going to complain. So I think the language here really needs to be thought over. What are we trying to do? And are we adding, even if it's not in the green books, the educational informational portion of utilizing our Veterans Commission that already does this for free? Like I said earlier when answering Representative Posey's concern, networking the networkers, you got people in these communities. Colonel Knapp's wholeheartedly accurate. We are the largest per capita veteran state. We're all over the place. We're here to help each other. But I'm afraid if a certain law comes out a certain way with certain language or certain language missing, it might deter people from trying to help. And veterans helping veterans, it's a hard thing to pull them off the tracks, but we're also served in a military that said, suck it up and deal with it. So after we fail the first time or it gets hard, we say, okay, I'm not going to step back on that landmine again. So I think there's a lot of ways we can help and we can get this done. I think the main focus needs to be clarifying the language and pointing out, state of Wyoming already helps you do this for free. So at no time should anybody in the state of Wyoming be charging or something along those lines unless you're absolutely qualified. You're going to need lawyers at some point if you keep getting your VA request denied. But to put together the paperwork, it's not that hard. It's the same way we reference bills. So specificity on the language would be my recommendation for contemplation.
Chairman Brown.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Joey, I'm torn on this one, man. And how you just worded it is where I get torn. We're built on a society where if you want to start a business, you can start a business, right? And if I'm affluent enough that I feel like I'm tired of waiting on this and I know somebody that I don't want to have to make an appointment with a VSO or anything like that, and I want to hire somebody to take care of this for me and I just sign on the dotted line and here's 10% of my benefits, why should the state of Wyoming make that illegal?
I don't think you would make it illegal for the person that wanted to. You would say in order for the person that's offering that help to accept the money would have to be accredited. And if they're that good and wanted to take money, they would go get accredited. I don't want to act like I could do this for a living, but I could probably do this for a living, but I don't want the money, so I'm not worried about going and getting accredited. I just give the help, and when it gets to the point of violating HIPAA, legal advice, or anything else I know in federal code, I send them to those guys. Okay, he's still there. Because there are other resources.
Okay. Any further questions? No? Thank you, Joey. Is there any further? Please come forward.
Chairman Pappas, members of this committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come to this great state. I have got the opportunity to get to many states over the last year and a half and talk to many bodies like you about this very important issue, and so I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Peter O'Rourke. I'm the president of the National Association for Veteran Rights, and once upon a time, I was the chief of staff and the acting secretary for President Trump at the Department of Veterans Affairs. A little bit about my background. I've been working on disability compensation since about 2007, assisting the department in analysis of the process, mainly on the initial side at the Veterans Benefits Administration, multiple times trying to help them with their cycle time improvement, quality improvement, basically to help veterans get what they deserve quicker and more accurately. So I would say that there is some I don't know if it's expertise because the rules seem to change regularly, but there is a lot of knowledge about the process. So there's a couple things about this process I'd love to share with you because I think it's good education in the sense of knowing really where a lot of this that you're reading about and maybe being exposed to for the first time, or maybe you've gone through this process yourself as a veteran, how this has worked. And I think it probably best is to start on something you just heard a few minutes ago about criminal penalties that used to exist in the federal statute about assisting veterans with these disability compensation claims. In 2006, there was a change in the law that dropped criminal penalties. There was also many other rewrites of underlying statute there that basically rearranged the part of Title 38 to align it with basically the way the VA is set up, with a Veterans Benefits Administration role and the Board of Veterans Appeals, which handles denied claims and veterans trying to take another attempt at getting their compensation. The clarification that was being made was exactly who the VA will work with directly on claims and appeals. And basically, before that period of time, there wasn't a whole lot of people available. This isn't something that's normally shared. There's about 15 accredited attorneys and agents prior to 2006 when the law was changed, mainly because nobody wanted to work under a system where the Department of Veterans Affairs could basically put you in jail for helping veterans. But the law was changed, those criminal penalties were dropped, or at least they were realigned to where the penalties were actually in the appropriate areas. And within about 5 years, we had 15,000 basically advocates, agents for veterans. So it was a good change in 2006. However, that did not change the underlying process by which these claims are done. That process still remained challenged by how long it took, a case management approach that basically created inaccuracies a lot of times, and basically the full weight of developing these claims, and development meaning collecting medical evidence, putting that package together, and then adjudicating that claim to give the veteran their disability rating. That didn't help that area. We did get more advocates. That helped veterans, I think, in their interactions with the VA, because basically it clarified and put agents to where a veteran could say, please be my representative with the VA and deal with the VA, because I don't know how to deal with this complex organization. And so it did help veterans in their interactions with the VA, but it didn't fundamentally change the process. In 2012, we had a crisis at the VA. A couple years later, you'll probably know about the crisis we had in Phoenix, but 2 years before that, we had a crisis at the Veterans Benefits Administration where we had basically a case backlog, which is defined by cases that have stretched over 125 days in processing to the tune of about 640,000 cases. So basically 640,000 veterans were waiting for their disability claims more than 125 days. The department's reaction to that crisis was, we're going to provide another option or a process for veterans to do their claim that basically shifted the workload out of the department and gave it to the veteran. And it was called the Fully Developed Claims Process. Originally, this was thought of as a collaboration between veteran service organizations and veterans, to where a veteran would notify the VA, I'm going to do my disability claim. That established their date of when their benefits would start, and then they had 1 year to develop their claim on their own, basically. Typically, the idea was using a veteran service organization to develop their claim, collect all their evidence, put that package together, submit it to the VA for an adjudicated rating. It didn't work, like many things. I don't know exactly why it didn't. Veterans did take advantage of the fully developed claims process, but having that take on a significant amount of the work from the VA never really materialized. We had more backlogs that happened again in 2016 and other times. So it was a good idea. But the reason I tell you that history is because that opened up the door to this process by which veterans are now empowered to do their own claim. And that also opened up, I think, Senator Kolb, you mentioned, why couldn't they hire somebody on their own or get their own assistants to do these claims? That's exactly what the door was open toward. Now, I will tell you that the current disability compensation that the department pushes out is around just north of $120 billion a year. And if the federal government's pushing out that much money, you're very sure that there's going to be lots of people trying to get their hands in that pot. And that's not good. So I've been working on this issue for about 3 years now, since leaving the department, specifically to try to help figure out how we can make this better for veterans. And I will tell you that the option of for-profit companies that help veterans with their disability claims, not represent veterans to the department, but help them with their claims, has been pretty successful from a perspective of finding ways to help veterans have a better claim to submit to the VA. There are companies out there that don't do this the right way, and so we decided to, as an association, come up with standards and certifications for that because there was lacking a standard across the board. And so we hold ourselves accountable, and we also hold the industry accountable for those things. But there is one thing I think specifically, and it's in your documentation here about something I hear a lot, which is that I think it's here, only persons accredited by the VA may assist claimants in the preparation, presentation, and prosecution of their claims and VA benefits, and you'll hear that referred to as in Title 38. What's missing from that is actually what the law says, which is no one can represent a veteran to the department in doing those things. Not just that nobody can do it, and I'll quote actually what the law says, because I think it's important to know that. Sorry. Section 5901 of Title 38 actually states, no individual may act as an agent or attorney in the preparation, presentation, or prosecution of any claim under laws administered by the VA unless such individual has been recognized for such purposes by the Secretary. And that recognition is accreditation. So you see a very specific piece in there. It's representation of a veteran, which means you have access to the Veterans Benefits Management System, which you heard about logins and those kind of things. That's where the veterans' information is stored. You have access to their health record that the VA may have. You have access to other things. But you're doing that on behalf of the veteran because you're their representative. And when a veteran decides to use a veteran service organization or an accredited agent, that's exactly what they're doing. They're signing a power of attorney to do that. They're very appropriate, and I can tell you as being the secretary, I would not want people having access to my systems unless I had vetted them. So it's a very appropriate system. So the companies that we represent at the association do not have that and do not serve as a representative of the veteran. They only serve as the veteran's consultant to help them with their claim. So I figured that would be specifically clearing that part of it up, because it is one of the biggest confusing areas for those folks. There is another piece about current law. I think we mentioned the New Jersey case. I'm going to let my colleague talk about the specific developments of that over the last couple of weeks, but enough of the history lesson. I'm here to answer any other questions you may have.
Well, thank you. Any questions for Mr. O'Rourke? Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is William Taylor. I am a West Point graduate, a 23-year Army veteran. I've deployed to combat 6 times in the Balkans, Iraq, and Afghanistan. I've worked from the tactical level up to the senior 4-star level as senior staff. And I'm also the president or CEO and one of the founders of Veterans Guardian VA Claims Consulting, one of the private companies that we're talking about here today. When I was getting out of the military in the 2015 to 18 timeframe, I personally experienced how difficult this process was. I had a hard time finding assistance. There wasn't a lot of information, and I had to figure out how to do it on my own. It took me a long time, but I was successful, and I quickly had my friends start asking for help, bosses started asking for help, and we quickly realized that there was a gap and that veterans were looking for another source of assistance, and that was the reason that we started this company. We have now grown. I have over 200 employees. Almost everyone that works for me is a veteran, a spouse of veteran, or a spouse of active duty. We have a 90% success rate with every veteran that we work with, and our average veteran is getting a decision in 85 days. And my average veteran is getting about $900 to $1,000 more a month in benefits. Now, why am I getting claims done? Why are my claims getting adjudicated in 85 days? It is because of the fully developed claim process. We decided that our role in this space was not just to replicate what the VSOs were doing. We don't just help fill out a form. I don't spend 30 minutes with them on the phone and fill out the form. We do nothing but fully develop claims. I've developed an AI system to do medical records review. I have nurses on my staff. I have experts at every step of the process. And we'll typically put in excess of 40 hours working with the veteran to help them develop their claim packet. And that's the reason that our claims are getting adjudicated, because we're removing a significant requirement that the VA has to develop that claim. We're doing that work for them before the claim gets to the VA. We do not act as the veteran's agent. We are very clear about that. We are there to help assist in developing the claim and putting together the information, but ultimately is the veteran submitting the claim to the VA in their own name on their own behalf, with us there to act as a consultant. And this is a very important time to actually talk about what happened with the New Jersey case, because this plays into that. Subsequent, on 1 April, on an appeal, the Third Circuit vacated the district court's ruling that was outlined in the packet that you received. And they basically stated that they vacated the ruling, and they said that it is, given that we are not acting as an agent, it is likely that what we are engaged in is speech, and that any ban on that speech is likely unconstitutional. They also found that it was, they doubted that the provisions of the New Jersey law are constitutional, and they even went a step further and said that there is a possibility that the current federal law may not be constitutional as well. So I think it's important to understand that the New Jersey case is still active. The Third Circuit has completely reversed the decision from the district court, and this is also being challenged in Maine as well. When we look at what's going on out in the states, there are only 4 states right now that I'm not operating in. That would be New York, New Jersey, Utah, and Maine. The other states that were mentioned, they said that we had to operate in compliance with 38 CFR. We believe that we are, because we are not acting as agents. I'd also like to bring up that in 21 states last year, there was a bill called the SAVE Act that was brought up. I recognize the concerns about our industry. There are predatory practices out there, but there are a lot of good actors that are doing things the right way. The SAVE Act that's been proposed in 21 states last year provided guardrails and consumer protections basically to address all of the concerns that were raised by the earlier testifiers. That has passed in 4 states now: Louisiana, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Florida just passed. Florida is going to the governor's desk for signature right now. Minnesota has passed it through both houses, but they've got to resolve it. So pretty quickly here, we're going to have 5 states that have passed basically a consumer protections bill that addresses the predatory practices, but still allows reputable companies like mine to continue to operate. I'd also like to highlight that at the federal level, there is a bill called the Choice Act that's being sponsored by Lieutenant General Jack Bergman out of Michigan 1. He's the highest ranking military officer to ever serve in Congress. That bill creates a path to accreditation for companies like ours, allows us to charge a fee, but most importantly, puts the guardrails in place. It puts a fee cap in place. It requires us to charge our fees only on a contingent basis. When we look at my fee structure right now, no veteran pays me a fee unless they have an increase in their benefits, and that fee, we give them the option to pay that over 5 months, 10 months, or a lump sum with the 10%. We basically, any fee paid to us is paid with new money that the veteran did not have before. So this federal law would ensure that no veteran would go into debt beyond where they currently were prior to coming in. Also, other things that are in this bill, bans against having doctors on your payroll. You can't have overseas call centers. You can't promise an increase. You can't collect upfront fees. That bill is going to be going to a markup on May 6th. It is being supported by all of the Republican members of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, to include Chairman Bost, Representative Keith Self, all former veterans. Right now, there was an opposing bill called the GUARD Act. I do not believe that's being currently sponsored by any Wyoming representatives. And the only bill that's getting marked up is the bill that would create a pathway to our companies operating. Bottom line is, I'm proud of the services that we provide to our veterans. We helped over 35,000 veterans around the world last year. I have clients in all 50 states and 31 countries. My My employees are proud of the service that they provide. My veterans are happy with the service that we're providing. 70% of my clients came to me last year after having utilized a free service. How do I know that? Because we looked at the decision letters coming back, and 70% of them had a VSO listed as the representative. Veterans are looking for another option. I am not here to replace them, but we believe veterans should have the freedom of choice to choose how they pursue their claim. They can use a veteran service officer, and in many cases, they're doing great work, and that's exactly where a veteran needs to be. They can do it on their own, but they should also have the freedom to choose if they want to use a paid service like ours, as long as they're doing that from a position of knowledge. And what we would like to recommend is, rather than just banning our industry in total, let's identify the practices we don't like, legislate against them, and provide a consumer protection bill until the federal government figures this out. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. That's exactly, I think, what Representative Brown was actually getting to earlier when he asked the question, you know, why would you make something illegal if someone wanted to purchase that service? And I frankly agree. And I agree with everything you said. I mean, it sounds like your company's doing the right thing. You're not doing predatory practices, yet you're a for-profit organization, right? Making money for people. I mean, I hire people a lot, right, to do things for me, and I expect to pay for the services. But as I also agree that there are probably folks that compete with you that are not so well-intentioned as your company. So, perhaps we need to not necessarily resurrect 210 in its current form, House Bill 210, but come up with a different structure to weed out the predatory practices without making folks who are giving veterans options, without making those companies illegal. Because I see the folks that want to use the free services through our veterans organizations, and I'm glad they're there for those people. But there are other people that do want the option to, it's just like the people in Canada who tell me, yeah, they can get their health service free, but I choose to go to the United States so I can get it now or get it better. So, I think people ought to have options. So anyhow, committee, any questions for Mr. Taylor? Chairman? Please.
Mr. Taylor, so similarly, I would ask you the question, why not just get accredited?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, that's a great question. The reason that we're not accredited right now is in 2006, prior to 2006, no one was allowed to charge a fee to do anything to help a veteran. They moved the needle a little bit, and they allowed attorneys to come into the space to charge a fee to help with appeals, but they maintained the restriction on assisting a veteran as an agent or attorney with an initial claim. 90% of the work we do focuses on helping a veteran to get it right the first time on initial claims, whether that's an initial claim or a secondary claim. And so if I become accredited right now, I cannot charge a fee to help a veteran with 90% of the work that we do. That's why we've made the choice to operate as an unaccredited entity. We do not become the veteran's agent to the VA. I'm merely a consultant to help them navigate the process. Now, the bill that I have been working at the federal level will change those rules and require me to get accredited, but then also allows us to charge a fee at any step of the process, but importantly puts those guardrails in place to ensure that there aren't predatory practices. But that's the reason we're choosing not to be accredited right now.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're even talking about the fees. Give an example of a standard fee that would be charged as a structure. And I just wanted to add, this probably really isn't about like your company. I assume you're doing things on the up and up. The only reason why we have statutory changes is to take care of the people that are the bad actors. So I think you probably know more than anybody about what a bad actor is. So
Yes, sir.
look forward to hearing what you think about ways of protecting the veterans from predatory practices. But first, just what are the fees we're talking about to help me out? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, so we work strictly on a contingent basis. If a veteran does not get an increase in their compensation, there is no fee. There's no upfront fee, nothing gets collected unless a veteran has a successful outcome. If a veteran does have a successful outcome, our fee is 5 months of the increase. So if a veteran comes to me at 50% making $1,000 a month, and I help them get to 70%, and they're now making roughly $1,500, my fee would be 5 times that $500 difference. We offer 3 payment plans. They can do a lump sum with the 10% discount. So if a veteran were to get several months of back pay, they might make the choice to pay it out of that back pay. We offer a 5-month plan or a 10-month plan. There's no interest, no fees on that. And so basically, it's either the veteran pays us the increase that they're getting for 5 months or half of the increase for 10 months, and then they enjoy that benefit for the remainder of their life. We've looked at, for my average client, our fee is less than 1% of their lifetime of benefits. And so that's basically our fee structure. So if you only have a 10% increase, let's say you go from 0 to 10%, your fee is only going to be $500 to $600. If you have a much larger increase, your fee will be more. Our average fee is about $4,000, and because my average veteran's getting about $900 more a month. So the second question, did you have a follow-on, sir? Okay. As to the second question, I am not here asking us to leave us unregulated. I'm not asking the federal government to leave us unregulated. I recognize that there are predatory practices. My company and many of the others that are reputable, we have gone out of our way to ensure that we address every complaint about this industry. So some of the issues are, there are companies out there charging upfront non-refundable fees and may not do the work. I believe that there should be a ban on upfront non-refundable fees. I believe that there should be a fee cap in place. The federal level, they're looking at a $12,500 fee cap, which would put it in line with similar to Social Security. I believe that fees should be contingent on a successful outcome. I don't think that we should have overseas call centers. I think that we should have to have HIPAA-compliant servers. I believe that we shouldn't have doctors on our payroll providing secondary medical opinions. We shouldn't be promising success. We should be ensuring that veterans know what their options are before they're choosing. I could go on, but we're here recommending those types of consumer protections so that we can allow reputable companies to still operate but address the predatory practices.
Follow up?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So maybe I'm going to ask a self-serving question here, but without your services, what are your opinion about the veterans being able to get those added benefits that they obviously deserve without your help? Because I just, the government sometimes, that's why you're in business. You saw a niche and a need, so you're doing that, fill that service. But in your opinion, would they get those services without your help, or they actually needed somebody to really, with your level of expertise, that they couldn't get through other free services? I mean, where do you sit on this? I mean, what is your opinion about the value of what you supply compared to what they could have gotten for free? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, I'm not going to give you my opinion. I'm going to tell you the behavior that I'm seeing. So 70% of my clients come to me after having tried the free services. So I'm not telling you that veterans are looking for something else or believing that they can't get where they believe they need to be without additional assistance. The veterans are telling you that by their behavior. I ensure that every veteran knows that there are free services available before they choose my services. I have a simple one-page form that we actually believe should be required both at the federal level and here in the state. And the first line is, I understand there's free services available, and here's the link where I can go find them on the VA website. I understand I can do this on my own. I understand I can be successful. I understand that you're not accredited, and I understand your fee structure. If the veteran knows all of that information and is making the choice to use my services, the veteran's behavior is telling you that they're looking for another option. The advantage that we bring is I've been able to leverage expertise, technology, and a team system to do fully developed claims. And when you get into some of these more difficult when you're doing PTSD, when you're doing secondary conditions, you really need to do the work for the VA. So for example, if I'm counting on that veteran, that rater to dig through 5,000 pages of medical records to find the 15 relevant pages on the knee condition I asked you to adjudicate, good luck. I've developed an AI system that can go through and find that, pull it out, and now when we submit a claim, we don't submit 5,000 pages of medical records, we submit the 15 relevant pages on the condition that we're looking at. And so I believe that our services, because of the way we're structured and the capabilities I'm able to bring to the fight, it gives us an ability to do those fully developed claims that VSOs can do, but it's much more difficult. They don't necessarily have the resources or the time necessary. I mean, I may spend 40 man-hours on an individual claim by the time someone's worked through my system, and I may have 12 or 15 different people touch that claim as they go through the process. And I think that's the difference we provide. And it doesn't mean there isn't a role for VSOs. It doesn't mean that there isn't a role for individuals. It just means that veterans should have that choice.
I didn't see him over there. Representative Tarver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, thank you for your testimony. It's like drinking from a fire hose. You're shooting so many things out there. I'm relatively lazy, and I don't want to have to do all this hard work. So why don't you tell me which bill that best fits our problem from another state? If you have a bill that takes care of the concerns that are being brought forth, I would love to know what that bill is, and maybe we can merge it in with what we got going on.
Mr. Taylor, do you have other legislation?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we do have draft legislation that we have proposed that has been, as I said, passed through 5 states already. We'd be happy to provide that. It also mirrors what's being proposed at the federal level. And frankly, we're open to any additions that you might see. So for example, in Florida, they felt that they wanted to have a more stringent background check on my veterans or on my employees. So that was something that Florida added to the bill, the recommendations that we made, and frankly, I don't see a problem with that, and we agreed with it. As long as I'm hiring reputable people, we should be more than happy with that. So that would be an example of not only can I provide that to you, but we would also be open to any additions.
Representative Tarver, maybe you'd want to make that motion later, that we follow that. So, perfect. Any other further questions? Representative Posey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that you navigate the system, but you can't speed the system up. I'm used to that system, and it's not user-friendly. So I guess you kind of just navigate people to where they could go, but not really. The governmental system is not fast. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I make just a quick comment on that?
You bet.
I am going into the same system that everybody else is. The difference is we remove one of the most significant steps from the VA's responsibility, and that's developing the evidence. And so when we do that work outside of the adjudication process, it removes a requirement from that rater, and that's what's allowing claims to be processed. My record is 36 hours. I've had about 6 or 7 claims adjudicated in less than 48 hours. And the reason is that every bit of evidence that rater needed to make the decision was included in the claim packet. And it's not that we're accelerating the system, it's that we're shifting the workload from the rater side to our side and allowing them to focus solely on adjudication and not evidence development.
Further questions, committee? Representative Geriger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if this is a question for you or just more of a question in general, but is there a similarity between the service that you provide and private, say, medicated planners? Is there an equivalency there, or is that something you're not very familiar with?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Geringer, the similarity comes in any type of government system, whether we're talking taxes, we're talking Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits. There is potential for private industry to come in and develop a understanding of that industry and be able to bring the resources to bear to support that. And that's where I see the similarities here. And that's where we've been able to come in. You know, and a great example would be bringing AI into this. I mean, that was a year-long effort on my part. We wrote our own code. I'm using a DoD grade system. We used our own database to train it, and a significant investment from our organization to develop that capability. But that has been a game changer for our ability to support claims. And that would be an example of where private industry can come in and provide additional resources.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your testimony. Any further testimony out there? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public testimony.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before you do, would it be appropriate to call Mr. Knapp back up here to ask a couple follow-up
Yeah,
questions?
if you have a question, please. Mr. Knapp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Knapp, for coming back up. I guess there's a couple of questions I have. One is, with the legislation that's out there, the SAVE Act in Florida, or some of the others that are alternatives that kind of go along these lines, do you see particular issues with that legislation? Is it something that, are you completely against any compensation, or do you see somewhat of a middle ground with legislation like that?
Yeah, your microphone, please.
Got it. Mr. Chairman, Representative, the point is, we follow the law. And the current law federally is that you don't exceed cap fees and that you get accredited. So I would ask, why not do that? If you really want to help veterans, get accredited and keep the cap fees within law. If the federal law changes, it changes. But right now, that's the law. So I can't understand why would Wyoming make a law that's contradictory to that? Now, I provided about 5 states' bills when we wrote this one to model it after. Those were successful. Those states passed that. I'm all about private and public partnership because Lord knows the government can't do it on its own. But let's do it to the standards. Get accredited. Keep your fees reasonable, which is defined in 9 different steps through VA. There are cease and desist letters out for organizations that have not followed that, both from the Secretary of VA, and right now you got the major organizations at the national level, VFW and American Legion, fighting against that. As far as other national bills that are out there, there's one called the PLUS Act. We are adamantly against the PLUS Act. And I've talked to our national level, our senators and our congresswomen about that. It creates loopholes to have non-accredited people serve veterans. I worked at Goodwill of Orange County, 130,000 veterans in that county for 4 years running the Veterans Center. We didn't charge veterans. We got grants and other means to fund that, but it was free. And we had accredited personnel, VA trained. It can be done. Our veteran service officers at the state level are the same way. They go through VA accreditation. It is free, and all the veterans, particularly in Campbell County I have, 3rd largest veteran population in the state, I walk them into the VSO and work very close with our state. I'm all about private organizations helping. I've worked for them, but let's do it within the law.
Brown. Oh,
Follow-up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to ask the question then, there was the distinction made in testimony here that the method of delivery was not such that they were acting as an agent, but really more of an advisory role, and the veteran themselves was actually submitting the claim, and so there was they kind of made the distinction there. So do you not see that sort of distinction then?
So both the VA, who's responsible federally to manage this, doesn't recognize it that way. nor do the veteran organizations, the larger veteran organizations. A for-profit business does, and there's different definitions, but it has been defined by the federal government to be against the law to do that. So whether an agent or an individual or whatever, if you are processing claims through VA for a veteran without accreditation, you're violating the law. So why not get accredited? You want to run your private business, get accredited by VA in accordance with the law, and keep those fees down. I mean, 5 times the amount that you're going to receive. I mean, I don't know if you all would do that with your Social Security or anything else, or your wages from the state, but that's pretty high, especially with most of our enlisted force coming out with no pension, and their initial claim that they have to file is 5 times what their benefit would get, and it's up front. So that's what the law fights against. The law is specific. These companies have received cease and desist statements from VA, and I've got copies of those. We got to do the right thing, and I hope Wyoming does that.
Mr. Knapp, I believe the testimony was 5 months, not 5 times.
They said 5 times, 5 months. 5 times was what was, yeah. So, you know, one thing that VA does in its accreditation process is look at different companies and see what they're actually charging, and how much is up front, and how many times, whether it's percentage or times the amount you're going to get. But that is federally capped right now. It is defined.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Knapp. Did you have, okay, you're good. Oh, yes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Knapp, I guess my question is what happens if you had a situation where the veteran would have never received any increase over their entire life because of whatever reason with the way the free service works, they didn't receive anything extra, right? They got nothing. And I'm government, right? It's probably not the most efficient operators in the world, but they're doing the best they can, and they couldn't find these things that this private company could find. Isn't that a benefit to the veteran at the end of the day? I mean, we can talk about a lot of the legalities, what change or not change, but wouldn't it be a positive thing for the veteran to get the benefits because somebody else found, you know, a reason for them to get those increased benefits? I mean, what do you think of that? Thank you,
Mr. Chairman and Senator, my answer to that is no. I've run a lot of veterans that have gone through VA upon their departure and got denied any benefits, or at least service-related claims, and 0% rating. My father gets a 0% rating from VA and still gets benefits under that. You can go back to that veteran service officer, that accredited veteran service officer, and reapply. And as things, I tell veterans, as the time goes on, one, VSOs change out, and just like a private organization or a government, you get what you get with who's in front of you. But that's why we're saying get them VA accredited, so they know the standards. Those standards change yearly as far as health conditions and what benefits you're getting. So I tell veterans to go back all the time. We're walking Vietnam veterans in by the droves right now in a veteran service officer. And for the first time since they left Vietnam, they're getting benefits. When they first came out, they didn't get any. So I would say, go back to the source. The source is accredited, and they don't charge you. And we do that. I've got a lot of guys that go back to the VSOs and get raised from 10% up to 40%, up to 100%. It's the way it's supposed to be done by law. And if private companies want to help, get accredited. Keep within the tax, or the fees, the charge fees. And we're all about private business doing that.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Knapp.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
I didn't think there were any. Okay, I'll close public testimony. Any directives, Mr. Chairman? Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a statement, I guess, and more that I'm hearing out of all of this, and it's not, I am blatantly torn on the idea. I had to go look up, when were funerals commoditized? Like, that seems really predatory. Somebody just died, and you're going to charge them to embalm their loved one, right? It's not much different. I'm really torn on that, but we allowed it, right? And we have some statuses that are out there. What I'm hearing right now is that we've got a lot of stuff happening at the federal level. A lot of stuff happening at the federal level, and what I'm hearing Mr. Knapp ask us to do is for the state of Wyoming to enforce federal law with a state law and by making us go after the predatory people here with state resources when the federal government should be doing their job. They removed those penalties because they recognize this as a machine, and there's a lot of people out there going after it. I'm also of the belief that this is free enterprise. Somebody has found a way to go after something, and there is adults making adult decisions and hiring somebody and paying somebody for a service. That is not the role of government to interject in on that. And so I'm sure there's probably going to be a motion here to try to create some level of a piece of legislation to bring forward. And I'm all for that, but I'm just not sure that it's this committee's responsibility to go in and enforce the federal issues that we're seeing happening right now between these veterans. I think that's the worst part, is we got veterans fighting veterans. So.
Representative Geringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also go on to say that I think we do need to protect our veterans against predatory practices. And so if in fact that is occurring, because there's a somewhat of a gray area because the feds are not enforcing, then maybe perhaps we need to step in as a stopgap measure, not necessarily go after the entire problem ourselves, but at least take care of some of the problems that have been brought up. And the bill that we worked in committee and amended in committee to take care of some of the additional issues that weren't included in the initial introduced legislation, I think went to a certain level. I think taking a look at the SAVE Act and looking at on the other side too, what Mr. Knapp referred to as the other competing legislation, is there some way that we can at least step in and take care of the predatory practices that are happening right now, and not just say, let the feds take care of it. The feds do need to take care of it. Maybe they will in the meantime. Maybe by the time that we get around to actually working this in the session, maybe it will have already been taken care of. Maybe not. If it has been, then great. We don't even have to work it. But at this point, I think we need to, we owe it to our residents and our veterans to at least look at this issue and take a stab at doing something to limit what's going on right now.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope that we'll maybe resist drafting this meeting. I think it's something that we need to do. I'd like a little more time to study, and I'm seeing this, and I just may be wrong, but I see this as kind of two different topics. I understand that an attorney and agent represents and has the ability to represent that veteran in the hearings before the VA, and then in this memo that was printed can charge some standard fees. And then if I hire Representative Nicholas to represent me, he can charge me fees as he represents me in a court of law. But then we have a separate entity that comes back to the veteran and says, we're not going to represent you. We're just going to help you get all the documentation put together correctly to where you don't need an attorney or an agent, and you'll be billed on any increase that you get. And if I'm understanding correctly, that's what we're trying to prohibit, but I'm struggling with why we would want to do that. And so I may not have it right. I'd like to be able to study this a little more. I'd like to look at some draft legislation that is in some of the other states and chew on this until our next meeting, and then bring this. I think it's something we need to address, but if the rest of you feel like we need to draft a bill, then so be it. But I think that we're kind of talking about two different components of this whole process. Help me understand that, Mr. Chairman.
No, I fully understand you. I think we're actually there's two issues I see at the table. Number one, I think we all want to stop predatory practices. That's a given, right? We don't want anyone out there, trying to take advantage of our veterans. But number two, I think the issue is we also, at least some of us, don't want to limit the ability for a veteran who does want to pay for those services to be able to do that. If they think they can get, have better benefits, higher benefits by using a paid service, somebody who can put the records together, not be their agent, put the records together so that they can apply, they should have that ability to do that. Now, whether that's an accredited company or not accredited company, to me, that is not a big issue because there's so many rules that the federal government makes that make no sense to me anyhow. And they're archaic half the time, that I think I'm just wanting to look out for the veteran. So if we can craft a bill that would outlaw some of the predatory practices in our state and still allow reputable companies to do business, I think that's a win-win. But I'll let the committee decide what they want to do. Representative Tarver, did you have a comment or a recommendation?
Well, Chairman, I was going to propose that we draft something, but after listening to the testimony, I agree with Representative Larson. I think we need to do a little bit more research on this.
Okay.
I think we've got plenty of time, don't we, to do some research on this, look at some different bills, work with Mr. Knapp. I think there's a solution here. We don't want to hurry this. Let's get it right, and so we can get it through that 2/3 vote.
So committee, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had this basic discussion with several veterans in my district, and they all have the same story, that the VA is even harder to negotiate or to navigate than Social Security, for example. It's just a quagmire when they get out there. And they're trying to do it through the veteran service officers, but they just don't seem to be able to get the result that they needed. And so a couple of them have gone to a service like Mr. Taylor's, and they were very satisfied with that. I haven't heard the horror stories of the other predators. I'm sure they're out there. I'm very sure they're out there. But the legitimate services that are being offered are a good thing. Mm-hmm. So why would we take that away from the veteran? That only hurts the veteran. I think we're back to the same thing. We need to sit down and really sort through this and understand how we can eliminate the predators without eliminating the legitimate aid to the veteran. And this is going to take a little more time than just drafting the bill right now.
Okay, so committee, I'm kind of getting the feeling that we don't want to do a bill right now, but I do think we want to continue the conversation. I would ask that both Mr. Knapp and Mr. Taylor provide us with information. I'd like to see the laws in other states. I'd like to see, so if you could provide the LSO staff with your information, we can look at that between now and the next committee meeting. And then we'll draft a bill, ask for a bill draft that meeting, and then we can finalize it in our Cheyenne meeting. So if that works for the rest of the committee, I'm good with that as well.
Mr. Chairman, last thing.
Yeah, Senator Cole, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it deserves further study. I don't usually say that because you put things off, but there's both sides to this issue. On one hand, we're talking about veterans who are an adult, who fought for the country. I think they're capable of making decisions. And I don't want to take that right away from them to making choices that they think benefits them, because maybe they don't want to spend all the time and the headache of dealing with the federal government. I'm sure they had their full of it when they were in the military. And when they're out, they know what it's like. And so maybe they do want to go this route. But I think that without this being settled law, at the federal level, I think it's not ripe yet. We don't know enough. Things haven't matured enough. But I think definitely, I certainly, being on this committee, would like to know more about this to keep up on it. So if there is something that needed to be done, we can react. So I'm certainly open to more information on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Nicholas.
Yeah, thank you. I would concur with what the last four folks just talked about. I'd kind of like to perhaps give directives to LSO to update the case that in Pennsylvania, I believe it was, with the new appeals court ruling on it. I'd like to see the actual drafts that are in Congress and what's going on and what that information looks like. So that would be coordinated through LSO to provide that information to them. I'd like to know more specifics on what predators are out there and what that information is and what that exists. And I presume that's out there so we can understand what the enemy is, other than just saying that there's an enemy there. And I presume that the folks in Congress probably have that testimony in front of them and that information, and you may have it as well. And so we can see what our targets are. I mean, this is very similar testimony that we had when we made the modifications to the bill in our committee on the House side. And what we drafted and what we came out with was basically we were thought a quick resolution to that, or a temporary resolution of that at the time. But now we can do a better job of it and be better informed. But all this information needs to be in front of us before I think we can actually craft the language necessary to do it. So I would concur. And ask for the information that we put together and have all sides present us that information so that we have better data in front of us as we move forward.
Mr. Chairman, I would just say, Mr. Knapp, since you're here basically representing yourself as a portion of the public, if you need questions answered or anything like that, certainly come to myself or the chairman. You also have Mr. Shepard that can help you through that process. Gentlemen, I noticed that you have a seasoned legislator there helping you with that process. You guys know how to get in touch with LSO, but I do think that it's critically important, as the former chairman of JAC just told us, we need all the tools. And so this is a very complex issue. And so if you guys can please make sure, I would ask for that. If we can get a definitive answer on getting some of that information way before our next meeting, I don't want that 2 weeks before. I'd like to see if we can get some of that information by June 1st. It gives you guys, I see some head shaking. So the sooner the better. So we can study it, get down into the nitty gritty of it. I think that would be much more helpful than getting it 2 weeks before. And then LSO, if we can please ensure that as soon as you guys receive a viable packet of information, you send it out to the committee.
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, any further comments on this particular topic? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to open it up for public comment on any issue from today. Anybody out there? I do, okay, I'll close public comment, but I do. Colonel Hinkle, would you please come up? And I also want to make an introduction. Jerry, why don't you come up? I think the committee ought to meet you. First of all, Colonel Hinkle, I know the general's probably left. Oh, he's here?
If you would like me to grab him, I can.
Well, no, I just wanted to know, we did, one of the topics that he wanted to continue in the interim was a firearm hold agreement. And so I just wanted to bring it up. If we wanted to bring that bill to the next meeting, I'm assuming we would just resurrect the bill that didn't make it without any changes, and then we could modify it at our next meeting. So I don't think we need to disturb the general wherever he's at. But I wanted to just check with you if that's your intent, because I thought during our interim topic meeting, that was something that he was particularly on his radar, but I didn't hear about it today.
Mr. Chairman, actually, if I may, I would like to defer discussion on this to Jerry Henderson. We've been working together on proposed way forward for this issue.
Okay, well, and so I wanted, Jerry, I met Jerry earlier today, and he is the new policy advisor on military issues for the governor, and I wanted the committee to meet him. So Jerry, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's discuss this topic. And here's the general. Come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Brown Committee. My name is Jerry Henderson. I'm a policy advisor in the governor's office, newly taking on Veterans Affairs and Military Affairs. So I'm really just here today to introduce myself to the committee, reiterate that supporting our service members, veterans, and their families continues to be a priority of the governor. We work with General Porter, Director Shepard, their teams, and hopefully you all as well, towards that goal. So I'm here really today just to introduce myself, provide myself as a resource on this issue, particularly because it concerns, the mental health of largely our veteran population, but also others around the state. This continues to be of interest to the governor. If this is the committee that, would like to introduce that legislation again, I would leave that to you, Chairman, and the committee. From my understanding, the Mental Health and Vulnerable Adults Task Force is also returning to some extent, based on Management Council. That could also be a valid place for that legislation, just because while our veteran population is vulnerable to suicide and mental health issues, I think that's not just exclusive to our veterans, it's exclusive to folks all around the state.
Okay, great. And I know you discussed this issue with Ms. Perot earlier, and I did as well, but her recommendation that she gave her committee about a military advisory council through the governor's office is something that I think is a very good thing. So I take back to the governor that he has certainly the full support of the two chairmen and probably most of the committee, although I haven't spoken to the committee. But let us help you make that happen if we can.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. That proposal is news to me today, so I look forward to working with you all and some other partners on what we could potentially make happen.
Okay, General Porter, we were just discussing the firearms hold agreement, and I know it was important on your radar, and it sounds like somebody else may be looking at this as well, but I was suggesting to Colonel Hinkle that we bring that bill back next meeting and we just start working it again. And if there's any changes that you and the governor's office might think, feel free to direct LSO to change it any way you think best. Okay, is that all right with the rest of the committee? Understood. I couldn't speak for the committee, but okay, great. All right, committee, any other questions?
Staff, you good?
We know where we're going, right? Okay, well, then thank you all for attending. Our next meeting will be here again.
2 days this time.
We'll have 2 days, so there'll be 2 full days, and we're gonna be discussing. Forgot the dates. Do you have the dates handy? Probably should.
August 20th.
It's in August.
Mr. Chairman, August 18th and 19th.
18th and 19th, we'll be back here. And we'll discuss, we'll continue discuss all these issues. So, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to sign?